Afternoon, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Tired, very, very tired.
That. How much sleep have you got?
Uh, about 4-ish hours or so.
That's not so bad.
Not so bad. The only thing is, I felt woeful. I felt woeful all day, and I cannot work out why.
Oh dear. Um, so I just went to bed almost immediately after I got off with you. Um, and then just put BBC News on the phone while I was sleeping so that every now and again I'd wake up and go, oh, that's good.
Nice, nice. We'll be ready to go just a minute. Paul, I would like hello and welcome to our local elections um, analysis live stream. We're still getting results through. We have a much bigger picture now, and I'm joined by Bernal, um, journalist, writer, political consultant, and author of Hard Thinking on the Soft Left, the excellent Substack, which I'm sure will have lots of great analysis on these results. Emma, your reactions to the performance of the various parties, with I'm guessing also a focus on Labour.
Pretty good, isn't it? Yeah, I think one of the things that I said last night that I think has been underappreciated is the different places that both the Tories are losing and that Labour and the Lib Dems are fighting. So there's been a real concentration of the fight against the Tories in different areas, and that's partly due to the way that politics has now really sorted. But it means that the Labour and the Lib Dems aren't spending that much energy fighting each other and are fighting the Tories. And that it also means that Sunak is just, falling apart in the red wall and the blue wall and any other wall you want to think of. So, I mean, this is a disastrous result for the Tories. We were joking around about how 1,000-seat losses were expectation management last night, and now it's looking like optimism, which is an extraordinary position for them to find themselves in. Equally, they're trying to say that it's not that great a result for Labour, but actually, even with these figures, which don't include the big Labour strongholds like London, or what could be potentially game-changing changes in Scotland, we're looking at a Labour majority, a projected Labour majority according to electoral calculus of 58 seats. Well, you know what? I think Labour would take that. That's kind of, when Boris Johnson won a majority of 80 seats, that was considered a landslide. And they haven't got an 80-seat majority anymore because they keep having to sack their MPs because they're idiots. So I think God love them for trying, because they've got to say something after the election, but I'm not sure the Tories have settled on an effective narrative about why they're not going to lose the next election yet.
Yeah, I would agree with a lot of that. I think the projection games, as fun as they are, I think they've confused some people. The idea that narrative that come up of Labour sort of just falling short, but without these huge caveats where, like, we don't have two entire countries involved or certain areas. I really couldn't agree more with that takeaway. And the areas also, I think, really do matter, because these were sort of the difficult and worrisome areas in terms of trying to get back.
Evening all.
Hi.
Hello, Paul. How are you?
I'm all right. I just had a couple of hours kip as well, so I'm happy.
Good. It appears to have done more favours for you than it has to me. I remember last night going through to the end of our first stream or whatever, thinking about what might be in play and how this might end up. And I remember waking up after a very short sleep and people tweeting that Stratford might be in play. And that is sort of a sum of how things have gone today. I mean, what's your takeaways from it all?
Me, it's carnage. I'm very surprised to see to hear so much doubt being talked about Labour's getting a majority. I think it's a catastrophe, and that you're looking at the Lib Dems, PNS being 18 to 20%, and the Greens being what, 8%. Well, I mean, like, that isn't going to hold up at a general election. We know what happens. It comes to Labour, right? And people will vote. The seats that they're losing. I mean, there are some places where, in the kind of red wall, Stockton-on-Tees, Walsall, in the Black Country, that sort of area, where the results aren't so great for Labour, and maybe the Tories can hold those seats. But there's so many others. But
even there, I was looking at somewhere in the Black Country. I can't remember exactly where it was. It was one of the ones that one of the Tory ministers was saying, but yes, we went forward 2 points. We gained 2% in this seat, but Labour had gained 10. And it's like that, that's not okay for you. I mean, it's okay for me, but
yeah, absolutely. Completely agree. And I mean, everything from what I'm seeing, it vindicates the national polls. Right, and we know that the national polls, as they stand, point to a big Labour majority. And I can't really, and what's more, I mean, I think we've always got to think ahead. What does this mean going forward? They are in so much trouble. You are going to see dozens more Tory MPs retiring now. You're going to see far fewer want to participate in the game and doing the interviews, defending the indefensible, that kind of thing. You've seen a wipeout of councillors that will mean less activists on the ground.
Yeah.
And
equally, the balance of that is nothing creates unity like winning.
Yes.
So Labour, who do love to tear each other apart and have a big old internal Barney, will actually, I think, be brought together much more by this. And nothing breeds success like success.
Yes.
So people want to get on that bandwagon rather than sort of constantly question its wobbliness.
100%. And I mean, and some of the ways that will manifest itself. Donors. Who's going to want to donate to a party that's going down, right, 1 year? You see it in media coverage. I mean, it was a major thing during the Blair era, where media don't want to back the wrong side, right? And they want to be connected to the government. So I think that, everything they've done with the BBC is a plan that, we can somehow, just destroy Labour going to the next election. I don't think it's going to happen, because I don't think people will really go along with it. You've also got to say success breeds success. There's a lot of voters, I think, who I've always thought there's a group of voters who just want to be on the winning side. That's why the polls got polls.
It's very human. Yes. And voter as goal hanger is absolutely a thing that exists.
Yeah. So, I don't see any, I mean, regarding the betting for the next election, it's amazing. It hasn't really moved that much. The majority is only just under even money. I've been a majority skeptic mostly the last 2 or 3 years. I'm not now. When you see places like Tamworth going an Aldershot, Bracknell Forest.
Labour currently hold Eton.
Yes.
I mean, that's barking.
Yes. So I mean, where is a safe Tory seat? And we've seen this for like 18. I mean, we saw this with the by-elections last year. That the fact that they lost Tebbutt and Honiton so spectacularly, which has never been marginal ever. A Bracknell Forest. I mean, it's an extraordinary result. I haven't even. I mean, to be honest with you, I've had a lot of days sleeping, and I haven't even been through all these results properly yet. But I just keep seeing absolutely stunning places where, how is that going Labour? How the Lib Dems wiping?
And it's great
them out there. I really do. Go on, carry on.
So it's great to see the kinds of working class places that the Tories had appealed to briefly going back to Labour, places that I really care about, like Dover and Blackpool, places that really need social public investment because they're so run down and have been so underinvested in for so long. So it's great to see that argument is working there.
Yes, and again, these are seats those 2 seats, Dover in particular, that hasn't been seen as marginal for 15 years or so.
No, Labour were kind of floating it as a very much a stretch target.
Yeah.
If they were floating it out loud, it wasn't that stretchy, I guess, because you don't say that out loud when you're doing expectation management. But still, it bodes very well for Labour across Kent as well. I mean, Kent. It used to be the case after 97, you could drive from London to Thanet, which is from the very far east of Kent, and not leave a Labour constituency. That has not been the case for decades now. No. And that places like Thanet, like Dover, and Maidstone for the Lib Dems is all coming back into play. It is extraordinary.
Yeah, I mean, again, Maidstone. Has Maidstone ever been a marginal seat? It just isn't.
Hertfordshire, for Christ's sake.
Yes. Yeah. Sussex again. Yeah, there's all sorts. We didn't even. I mean, to me, that Kent's really important. I mean, again.
It is for me because I went to uni there and I worked for the Kent Messenger for years. We talked about it last night, but yeah, But I think as a bellwether, Kent's fascinating.
Absolutely. There's loads of bellwether seats there, isn't there? Or they were. I mean, that was the point. When the Blair majority included lots of seats in Kent, and almost the moment that Blair left office, right, they were gone. They were gone. They were completely gone. And if they're in play, these aren't even things that I would have even thought were on the majority list. So, yeah. And also, I mean, I'm not sure to what extent this is factored in by PNS, but, it's always important to remember that Labour are fundamentally disadvantaged at local elections anyway, because their voters are younger and less likely to vote. So you add on top of this...
Never mind voter ID.
Yeah, I do indeed, yes. We've got Wales, again, there are a few really straightforward gains in Labour for Wales anyway.
And not least because Plaid Cymru are currently completely in a mess.
Yes. Yeah,
that's an underreported story compared to the SNP, but they've just had a hugely excoriating internal report. And the leader's refusing to resign.
Right, so again, you're just talking about the complete unravelling of everything that has happened over the last decade that has hurt Labour so badly. I completely converted to the majority now. I think they will get a majority, probably quite a comfortable one too. And as I say, another little thing. As we were talking about Josh beyond top line last night, we're going to have his. So I'm just going to credit him with a point because he made me think of it. But there's no Reform candidates in this election. Reform are, sometimes getting up to 7-8%, right? And I would have thought, in light of this, in light of the inevitable split within the Tory party and the Boris supporters are likely to try and destabilise Sunak now, it's probably going to boost Reform further. So, whereas the left has this always going to have this problem with votes split in several ways, but Tories have just had a free run there. The independents have all fallen back that hurt them to 4 years ago. Reform didn't run, and they've still had an absolute disaster. I just don't see where the comeback comes from. I don't see what could happen. I mean, they're not going to deliver the real change on the ground. So
let's take Rishi's missions, what I can remember of them. Stopping small boats, not going to happen.
No, people in Dover clearly don't think he's delivering.
No, absolutely. Halving inflation. Oh, good. Things just get more expensive, slightly slower.
Yeah, absolutely.
What I can't even remember the other three. Isn't that terrible?
I will.
Yeah.
Right. The other three.
NHS cutting the waiting list. Well, maybe. But you'd have to make a hell of a dent in them for people to feel it. And we've got another winter crisis to go before the next election. Never mind the fact that we're in perma crisis anyway.
Yeah.
And then there was reducing the national debt, which I don't think is something that, Paul, the look on your face Absolutely incredible. I'm definitely going back to screenshot that. But no, reducing the national debt was 0.3 of 5. 0.2 was having the economy growing as well. And yeah, the first issue was halving inflation this year, which I'm guessing was sort of baked in for the fact that they expected it to drop. So they thought they could see it as a win. But as you point out, and as was pointed out earlier, I think by, I believe it's Susie Boniface of the Daily Mirror on the Politics Live programme, you're not putting more cheese in people's sandwiches or something like that. She said to that effect. So,
and yeah. I think people hear halving inflation and think price reduction, and they're not the same thing. They're not the same thing at all. So I think there'll be a lot of, like, the Tories can go around saying we've halved inflation, and everyone will go, yeah, but butter's still ridiculously expensive. And yeah, that is ultimately what matters. Halving the national debt, impossible to do. Like, reducing the national debt, well, while interest rates are so high, that ain't going to happen. And the economy point is interesting, actually, because that did happen under the last Tory government before a massive Labour landslide came in.
Indeed. Yeah, and that was a genuinely good economy.
Yeah.
That wasn't like a dead cat bounce or anything. That was genuinely sustainable.
Yeah, the economy was coming back from the mess they'd already made of it, to be fair. And what I've often said with those people who go, oh, is this 92 or is it 97? The thing about 92 is that the ERM, crashing out of the ERM, didn't happen till after the election. Liz Truss happened before this election.
Yeah, and again, on the Liz Truss thing, I mean, a lot of people are still on fixed rate mortgages, and a lot of people will come off them in the next year.
December 2015, please God, let me get a Labour government.
Yeah, I just don't see how there is any good news whatsoever from them. I mean, we are now, I mean, again, we were talking before, everybody sort of thought about 1,000 losses is just a total catastrophe. Well, it looks like being around that, so close to it. So I don't really see how we can kind of spin any other kind of result out of it. It's grim. And as I say, it may well get worse because that's how these things work, you know, people turn.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been saying for a while now that the policy bits, the big P politics, all of it, the whole game, sometimes the wind just changes. Yeah. And the public just say, no, fuck it. We're done. And that is how it's felt. And Rishi Sunak can probably stem the losses a little more than Liz Truss could have, or Boris Johnson could have. But the public are done. They're done.
And every time, you know, Sunak is under, and Sunak will always, even if he is a superior leader and a more palatable figure to people, he's always going to be undone by the people around him. I mean, but bottom line is, you know, some of the most toxic Tory MPs have their own TV shows now. They're in people's faces. That's something we have to get into here as well. I mean, what's going to happen here with the next Tory leadership now and after the election? Because you see straight away Team Boris and the CDO and Guido Fawkes, they're straight into Sunak. Right? Right. And they're not going to stop. And Boris clearly hasn't given up. And if not, I mean, I just find it absurd, the idea that Boris could come back, but I think they're going to try. But if he doesn't, but let's say that isn't a flyer, will they look to someone else?
I mean, Suella's obviously positioning herself. Kemi Badenoch's positioning herself.
Neither of whom I would say are particularly electoral. And I mean, I know he again, but Jacob Rees-Mogg has said he would be interested in standing next time. Now he might do it just to try and save his seat. If there was an opening, you know, you could see, because at the moment he looks pretty screwed there in Somerset. So, you know, I just see, we were talking about last night. I mean, I do honestly think we might be seeing the end of the Conservative Party. There's no reason why. I know that there's something that people have said before 1,000 times in other situations. But when you've got a situation where, number one, over a decade, they have transformed their voter base from being one that did have all age groups in it to now the one that's overwhelmingly dominated by pensioners, right? And their numbers amongst under 40s are just abysmal. You've got that. So you've got a massive existential problem there. You've got the possibility here that Labour could get a big majority, that even if Labour fail in government, they'll still get 2 terms. It will be a decade before they come back. And you've got a membership base and
elected Liz Truss. And we'll
yes,
do it again. Yeah. I mean, it won't be Liz Truss, but it'll be just as headbangy.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, I mean, I don't think there's anything good to say for them. And I do think that on the betting side, there are great opportunities right now, still back in Labour. I'm surprised the odds have held up. I thought it would have collapsed by now.
If only I knew how to put a bet on, I'd do that. But given that I'm on this betting live stream, I'm like, oh.
I will show you. We can show you. No problem.
I must have been slightly surprised that there wasn't more of a market swing, either with us or with the exchange especially. And I wonder, is that because of the narrative that's come from projections or whatever, where people are sort of not factoring in Scotland, not factoring in Wales, etc., or is that basically because of the belief basically that there's a barrier, right, in the sense of people see all the time bigger swing needed since Blair, people see all the time like 10 points needed for like 1 seat, whatever, they make those mental arithmetic calculations, and it prevents them from basically backing this outcome, because we've seen it in previous elections or whatever. People assume that something can't be done even if the data is showing differently. Biden, namely, really comes to mind, but in a different way.
I remember having a conversation with someone from YouGov, I won't name them, but when the MRP came out, I think it was prior to 2017.
Yes.
They said that Canterbury was going to go Labour. I'm like, Canterbury? Labour? Are you mad? And then Rosie Duffield duly won. And they were explaining to me, take all your priors out. And I had a lot of priors about Canterbury because I voted for the first time in 1997. That was the first time I voted in a general election in Canterbury, where I was a student. And so I was like, yeah, it's never going to happen. Like, if we couldn't get it in 97, why will we get it now? And I was wrong. And it was a very salutary lesson about what is the difference between an instinctual prior and a data prior, and how to try and look at those differently.
Right. I mean, of course, these seats have changed as well, haven't they? I mean, there's commuters moving out.
Well, for a start, there was a big barracks in Canterbury in 97, which probably made quite a big difference.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that, actually. That's really, that explains a lot.
It used to be the case because back in the day, all the pubs closed at the same time. And Canterbury is largely based around a big high street. So you'd have all the locals pubs, all the student pubs, and all the squaddy pubs all emptying into the high street at the same time. It's bloody carnage.
The 90s for you. My youth.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah.
It just wouldn't be a British political discussion without some reference to the 90s. So I'm quite glad we've got our 90s reference in relatively early. We've talked a lot about Labour. We should talk about the Liberal Democrats and the Greens. The Liberal Democrats have had a storming day. If the night belonged to Labour, the afternoon has definitely belonged to Liberal Democrats. What do you make of it all, Paul? You've tracked Liberal Democrat progress.
I mean, again, this actually, even more so than the Labour results, is the indication that we are going to get a 97, 2001, because that was the point. Their task was so much harder than the Tories because they had this sort of 30 to 40 solid marginals with the Lib Dems that they were struggling in, right, in these sorts of places where they're winning. And it seems that that's spread out now. The Lib Dems are doing better in an even wider range of blue wall seats. Right now, again, like we're going to, I'm certain that we are getting a tactical coalition here, and that people are switching. And you saw it even when Labour had a very toxic or Marmite leader with Corbyn, right, on the floor in 2019. The Labour vote went up during the election campaign by 5 or 6% because people who were saying Lib Dem realised who could win in their seat.
Yeah.
Now, I'm quite certain that the Labour vote in these places where they've just stormed the councils in the south, the Labour vote will collapse. It will go for Lib Dems. And
I'm sure you're right. I'm absolutely sure you're right. And what neither side needs or wants to do is make that tacit, explicit rather. As we discussed last night, point your resources in the right direction.
Yeah.
But give the voters the empowerment of choice, and they'll make the right one. Tell them what to do, and they'll tell you to fuck off.
Yes, and they don't even need to. I mean, like we've seen this now for a couple of years now. This is clearly going on. Nobody from Labour or Lib Dems has made that explicit reference, and yet there are still plenty of sites out there. The one that Carol Vorderman is desperately pushing around the place, telling people where to vote. We've got the tools now to do this. We don't need to be told by political leaders what to do.
Absolutely. And the thing is that there are so few Labour Lib Dem marginals now.
Yeah.
That it's just not necessary. You don't need to be stepping down in each other's favour because everybody knows who the front runner's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And they'll see with the, when the town centre turns yellow or red, with activists, they'll notice. Yeah. Well, I mean, again, like we're talking about next session, it's really going to be interesting how they price up the seat totals here, because once again, I mean, 97, which I didn't bet on. It was the first time I ever watched from a betting perspective. No, but that was a big upset. That was not predicted. I think that Labour were expected to get about 340, 350 seats, and then to get 407. And I think that's where we are now. Again, there's a lot of caution in this punditry, which is saying, maybe it's a Labour minority. So if you want to back a big Labour majority, it's going to be really, really rewarding if it comes off. And that would be, I mean, none of the bookies have priced this up yet because the boundary changes and whatnot, those uncertainties, but they will soon. And that's where I'll be looking at the extreme ends, the 400 seats plus. Because we've seen that on it. I'm not saying they're going to win, but I think that would be massive odds. And if not out of the question, there'll be a way of covering it.
Yeah, just on that point, I think the point about the areas and the difference in those areas is so crucial because, and I discussed this earlier, you have formerly Labour areas that are now being retaken by the party, and you've got more affluent, more southeastern, sort of more upwardly mobile is not the way to basically greener areas, right? Greener, wider areas,
and literally greener areas now.
Yeah, literally areas where the Lib Dems have a more natural appeal because people, hopefully for them, are more naturally inclined with all their beliefs to vote Lib Dem potentially. So there's that perfect sort of splitting.
And also, I think the Lib Dems made the right choice in leader. I don't find Edward Davey particularly charismatic, but they could have gone one way or the other when they had the Ed Davey, Layla Moran choice. And they leant away from their kind of heavily identity politics base into the soft Tory world. And that, for the kind of seats they're facing, was absolutely the right choice.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely. That's the future of the Liberal Democrats. If they're going to be on their party, they should be the Liberal Conservatives.
Yeah, they're the non-conservative options that natural Conservative voters who are turned off by the current Conservatives can stomach voting for.
Yeah. And I mean, long term,
it's not an inconsiderable constituency.
No, I mean, long term, it's probably the future, because I don't see, as much as the Tories seem to be heading inevitably into right-wing populism like other right-wing parties, I don't see that as being much of a selling point in 10 years, 20 years, when like there's been so much generational replacement.
Guys, I'm really, really sorry. I have to run. But it's been great.
Yeah, cool. Thanks for coming on.
It was fun talking to you last night, and it's been fun talking to you today.
Thank you so much, Emma.
Take care.
Yeah.
That was Emma Burnell. She writes the Substack Hard Thinking on the Soft Left, and she's an excellent follow on Twitter as well, where her username is at capital E Emma, capital B Burnell, all in one go with an underscore at the end. This thing about the future of the parties is really interesting to me, because thinking about the future of the Tory party right now, it's very difficult to be confident about it in any way, shape, or form. Say if we have an election result as big as some are predicting at the upper end of the scale, whatever, and they have a long time in opposition, who is there even a rebuilding process, and who it sort of sticks around for? And your comments on Jacob Rees-Mogg, etc., it was of interest just because who wants that job, essentially, which could be a repeat of the Blair years, in the sense that should Labour win big enough to have a buffer, etc., where you'd make him say odds on to have another term in office unless things went really bad, who's sitting around for the fight, essentially, for 10 or so years?
Yeah, and who will have a seat?
Oh, yeah.
Who will have a seat? There's the other thing. I mean, because, you know, I've said before, I'm still going to ban Penny Mordaunt, trying to say she's probably the most electable one they've got. But that seat's got to be very marginal. I'm not saying she can't hold it. You know, she's done very well there, so she's probably got a personal vote. You know, it's a naval area, Portsmouth. She probably benefits from that. So perhaps that she's young enough, you know, she's young enough to get the job in 2024, 25, lose an election but improve the Tory position and keep the job and get in the second time. That's possible. But take her out of it, and really, who have you got? I mean, as I say, let's just say, for argument's sake, they end up with 180 seats.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of anyone who would, I mean, because Mogg will be gone. I don't think Mogg would be a terrible choice, but I think he clearly would run. He'd have a very good chance of winning if he did run. I don't think he'll be around. Braverman could well lose her seat. And also, I mean, I'm sorry, but Suella Braverman is not going to be a successful party leader. I'm not having it. You know, she is a really toxic person. Dowden, no, I'm convinced. Well, I mean, actually, go back over and over again. He never gets anywhere in these leadership contests. But it does amaze me, but they never look at Grant Shapps. Because Shapps is actually, he's like, that's the sort of Tory people vote for. He comes across as competent. He does TV well, right? He doesn't really come across as extreme in any way, right? Yeah. He does have the sort of language to talk to the everyday voter. And yet they don't like him. So, I mean, I would have thought that's a seat, Wellington City. I would have thought they would hold that, not certainty, but he'd have a good chance. Perhaps him, but I mean, actually, let me just get up a list. Let's just get up a list for the next Tory leader here.
Okay, I'll bring the star market as well.
Yeah, yeah. So, and let's look at their constituencies. Party leader. Oh, yeah. No, this is the one I like. I'm saying this. This is the only. I've only had a very small bet on him, but I like it. Cleverly. I think that he would probably. Well, I'm saying he would hold it. They had some really bad results in Essex last night. But again, coming from Essex originally, I'm never going to be able to get my head around the idea that they could lose Braintree, right? You know, Braintree and Whitton very near each other. Priti Patel's the other one. If Cleverly keeps his seat, he must have a very good chance. Foreign secretaries have a great record. He's on the TV all the time, get a good communicator. But then, you know, is Cleverly really going to turn this around? I'm not sure. I'm not convinced.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's very difficult to think of who will be able to turn it around. If it's to be a turn it around type, it probably needs to be one of the very small group of people who'd be left, presumably, that would that you know, are more thinking conservatives, right? More like think tank types. When I say think tank types, I don't mean the IEA types, whatever. I mean more of the self-aware, let's build houses types, the Robert Colvilles, etc. of the world, who like are aware of where they go. But then the whole thing comes around to, we're talking about it like this now. It could become a grand national effect of who is just left standing, and then you go from that. Because, you know, I was thinking, I mean, Shapps Cleverly would be near the top of that list if they were remaining. And I think about the names, and there are so many that are at risk. You know, like third or two of the cabinet are already at risk, and today's results would appear to put them in real deep trouble. I mean, we were talking about Jacob Rees-Mogg earlier. The Lib Dems have walked all over the Tories today in North East Somerset, in that area. Not even the first time, apparently, that's happened at the local level. So it will be really, really interesting to see the next MRP or whatever, for the next set of projections.
Although I would just say this about Mogg's seat. You know, the electoral calculus keep publishing like forecasts for individual seats. Well, they've got Labour in second there, right? And this would be this could save a few. This is going to be the problem. There are some seats where it isn't clear, for whatever reason, which is the alternative party to the Conservatives. And there is a chance that Labour and Lib Dem end up splitting votes in that seat, and he ends up coming through on 38, 39. But again, I mean, Mogg's not, I just don't buy it. Mogg's not a popular character. He's not going to appeal to anybody other than the Tory hardcore. And to do this, you have to be a Robert Halfon. I mean, Robert Halfon, he's someone to think about. You know, again, people are going to look at these results and say which areas did well. We're going to say Harlow, and they'll credit Halfon that we did. So yeah, he would be someone. He'd be an enormous price as well, I would have thought. Halfon, never even seen him mentioned. Where's Ben Wallace's seat? Let me just get this up.
I mean, that is a good shout, and it's Wyre and Preston North is a seat. I mean,
that's troublesome.
Because the thing was, if Wallace was, if you knew for a fact a hypothetical leadership contest was to stand, as happened in the past before he decided he'd pull out, he'd be favourite, right? If it was the Con Home League table, the cabinet satisfaction rankings are always one of the best ways to find out who's doing well or not. He consistently pretty much is either top to third in them. The only thing one wonders is, I get the feeling that he's a man focused entirely on the mission of just defence. I think that generally is just it for him. And I can't imagine, if he was a defence secretary anymore, which he wouldn't be after the next election, him wanted to go and like slog through that. This is assuming he keeps, particularly when any defence establishment would have him, right? Like I could easily see him going and doing something with NATO.
Oh, absolutely, I've long predicted he would do. He could be next Secretary General. If Wallace was being almost handed the Prime Minister job on a plate. You know, he had the Tory press backing him. He had lots of Tory people saying, "Please, bear with one," and he didn't want it. So you have to wonder: is he really going to want to be leader of the opposition when the Tory party have reduced less than 200 MPs? It's not a great job. But again, go back to 97, use that as the guide, right? Aid came from nowhere, and it was just a case of, so who ran in that? So if we were talking 1 year before the 97 election, Michael Portillo would have been a very short price favourite. Very short price favourite. Ken Clarke would have been up there, but there was always great scepticism because of his pro-European views that he would get over the line. And the others were Michael Howard who was not the Michael Howard who became leader. He was a much more toxic figure. When he became leader, he actually sort of restored his credibility a little bit. 97, he had none. Who were the other ones? Oh, John Redwood. John Redwood found in 97. You know, it was a really run bunch, and they ended up, you know, Haig kind of got it almost by default in that here's a guy, he hasn't got any baggage. He says he's anti-Europe, right? You know, he's young, he could grow into the job. But it was a real punt, you know. It was a case of like, you know, well, he's our best bet. And actually, as it turns out, I think he'd say himself, he became leader 10 years too early. He would have made a decent leader in the 2010s when he was a bit older and more experienced.
Yeah.
It's not good. There's nothing good to come out of it. I mean, on the next leader thing, I think I'm just going to keep on backing James Cleverly for now, because I'm pretty confident that he will be left standing. He'll have been the foreign secretary, which is the best, probably the single best job to have before becoming prime minister. Yeah, I would go on that, and maybe, you know, throw a few darts around at people like Shapps, and I mean, Steve Baker would be one I'd consider, but I don't think he's going to keep that seat. Wickham.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one where you can, for small stakes, get a few on sides that you think would be around, and then watch them shorten. Because yeah, that's a fascinating picture to think about for the Conservatives. What will be left in the next general election? We need to talk about the Green Party, because quietly they've had a really good time of things. First of all, they actually control the council now. They have taken their first council, I believe. And yeah, Greens will be very, very happy, looking to push for maybe possibly another seat at the general election. Question to us here, we've talked a lot about voter bases changing, etc. As Labour's does under Starmer a bit, well, if not its base, at least its membership, could there be any Green pickup from Labour, from disaffected Labour voters who aren't on board with the project?
Maybe in university seats, maybe, you know, Bristol West, never out of the question for them. I don't see that being as big a thing. Like I said, I find that general argument that, you know, the ultra left needs to be appeased as not really very convincing. It's mostly going to be city-based voters and university-based voters, right? And, you know, I mean, another way of looking at it is from Labour's point of view. If Labour have got 350 seats, would losing Bristol West to a fellow progressive party really be such a disaster? Not really. No. And so, you know, I was talking about my friends on the Green Council in Glastonbury last night. Now, what I keep saying to them is, what you need to be doing strategically, the Green Party needs to become the progressive UKIP, the left UKIP. And when I say that, I mean you've got to be the gateway drug from getting Tories to switch left, so to speak, right? They need a by-election somewhere. If they could just this is a start, good local election results, to getting taken a bit more seriously. They have a distinct set of issues, distinct brand. I don't think they would be able to make that breakthrough in a by-election this side of a general election. I could very much see a situation where they do much better at the next general election, and then mid-term Labour government becomes unpopular. They might become a natural, especially if that seat isn't in a city seat or a university town, they could win that. And there's potential. And another thing, of course, though, is that they are winning a lot of these. They're winning these seats off the Tories, right? They're winning these voters mostly off the Tories. It's a protest vote thing.
Yeah.
Well, if those people, for now, temporarily consider themselves to be pretty green on that, well, come the general election, who's going to have the most green off Labour or the Tories? It will be Labour by a mile.
Yeah.
Right? And again, we saw in the last two elections, the Green vote in the general election campaign collapses and goes to Labour. So I think you will see that happen again. I don't think the Tories are getting too many of those people back.
Fair, and very comprehensive indeed. We should add, that's a good point on them taking off the Tories, because they've marched into some areas where you wouldn't really, if you're thinking stereotypically, you wouldn't really have the Greens in mind when thinking of places like, I don't know, mid Suffolk. I mean, it doesn't feel instinctively a very green place to me, but they've made some gains, and they themselves too are on the march. A couple of notable results they've just popped up recently for different reasons. Firstly, the Lib Dems have taken West Berkshire from the Tories. That's the first time since 2005. And all day that had been sort of one of those stories where you hear a bit more and more about it, and you think, could it happen? Could it happen? And it's happened. So again, they are just lying at the moment. The other one, which I found out by the BBC, was Labour winning York at the not inconsiderable price. Actually, guess the price that Labour went off to take York with us.
Oh, 20 to 1? 10 to 1? Yeah. No, but so again, that's really interesting, because there are seats, there are marginals around there, like York Outer. Now, again, I was in York 2 weeks ago. My good friend Mark Stewart, my former teacher at university, was there. I was staying up and we went racing. Now, he was telling me, and he was pointing out, he said, actually, like, it could be a hard place for the Liberals to take, because the Tories are running a very strong ground game there. They were leafleting prolifically, right? They were target votes. And look what's happened, right? So even where they're running a very strong, serious campaign, they're still getting obliterated. There is no, again, there's no positives here. If they can't, York and the surrounds of York, that's very Tory territory fundamentally.
Yeah. No, it spells big trouble. I mean, one of the really difficult things about any sort of hope of a revival for the Conservatives is the fact that it's hard enough defending from one party with one sort of change that are going against you, whether they be, purely cultural, purely economic, or whatever. The Conservatives are trying to do both, right? They're trying to keep areas that have been historically Labour in the past, but they're also trying to keep areas where the voter base, I think, has been more naturally inclined to vote Conservative, but because of the direction they've taken and the events the past 2 years or whatever, they've managed to upset a lot of softer, small D Conservatives who are clustered really badly for them if you're trying to run a defensive game plan. And then you've got all these people ready to go for the Lib Dems, etc., who, as Emma said before she went, have made quite a good job of appealing fairly openly to those guys. So yeah, really tricky for them. Let's go for a couple of recent results, because they're coming in now. We still don't have all of them, by the way. Local elections are a long counting process. I think by about 8:30 tonight we'd know. Lib Dem hold of Winchester, nobody in charge in Rutland, nobody in charge at Stockport or Warwick. The Tories have lost East Riding of Yorkshire Council. That confirmed just 10
Beverley. That's Beverley.
Beverley, right?
Yeah, this is actually, that's interesting. I've got, my brain's going a bit. I've got a feeling.
Yeah, me both.
That if you go back to '97, because again, like I was at Beverley the other week for racing. That's just so true blue. It's unbelievable. It's a cathedral city. It's just screams blue, Victoria, Tory blue. I'm sure that I've got a feeling that in '97 that might have been one of the ones that went, or it was very close to going. So again, if they're struggling in a place like that, it's bad. It's really bad news. We come back again, like with this whole business about defending the blue wall. Where are their activists going to come from? They're going to have to fight. They can't. When you think, I can remember, like, let's say the last few elections, I think they have targeted around 80 seats. 40 they hold, 40 they were looking for. Maybe that switches a bit under Boris because of the Corbyn factor, but certainly that was what they did against Miliband it was 40-40. And that was like, that's the best way we can use our resources, right? This is a much better time for them when their resources, membership-wise, is probably much stronger. If they can't fight 80 seats this time, they're defending, they're in danger of losing 200, right? Let alone gaining any, right? And you just can't spread your activists that thin. And especially when a lot of those activists are councillors who have just lost their seats and will probably walk away now. You may also start seeing some of these councillors defecting, especially if it's the Liberals who they can deal with, rather than Labour. In a way, I'm a bit surprised that we've only seen Christian Wakeford cross the floor, because that's always a dynamic. There's no good news there for them, none at all.
Indeed. Just on the defections note, I have it on good authority, because I know a couple of people who are working that effort. Wakeford was not the only person involved in talks, or the only person being sought out. I think it was the only person who eventually went. My working theory is that because of the direct animosity between leaders at some point, and then in particular, like outriders or whatever, like the two parties. I know sometimes I see people, progressives, asking for more from Labour and like more of a separation between the two parties. But let me tell you, they are very much nothing alike now, as it stands. And I think that was a barrier to people making the jump, to more people making the jump. But I wouldn't be surprised. I would not be surprised to see some defection at all. In fact, just on the thoughts of the next general election, let's have a look quickly at the market prices of today. At the moment, I might even bring this up on screen, so do bear with me.
I'll just put this in too.
Righto, so we'll do some general comparisons actually as well. Or use odd check and see if anybody sort of bid out in uniform, or out, I should say, of the ordinary when it comes to next general election.
Leaders as well.
Leaders.
See, right, now here you go.
Yep.
Look, I am not a person I'm a very risk-averse punter, right? I do not like odds-on bets. Never back a horse at odds-on. I haven't backed a horse odds-on in like 30 years, right? I struggle even to back a cricket team odds-on, in a two-horse race or a test match. Yep. But I'm looking at some of these and I'm looking like, really? You can make 25% of your money on Labour winning most seats? Right, that's just going to happen. It's done. And also, I did lay some Tory majority this morning at 8.6, so about 12%. How do they win a majority? How is that possible from here? Right, it would require such a dramatic turnaround. It would probably be the most dramatic turnaround in opinion polling in history by quite some way for them to do that. So I think they're both just great investments. I am now, as I say, converted to the Labour majority, although that obviously isn't certainty. So possibly your best done. Let's have some 2-1 on Starmer.
Yeah, wow. This seems to have gone a bit under the radar. I wonder if it's a display issue. Oh no, it's not, with live score bet. So yeah, that's they are out on a limb there. You can get freeze on, Betfair, etc. We don't yet have that market because we're offering the majority market, though we are now on Odds Checker. So do make sure to sign up and to claim any offers. But yeah, that's a really interesting alternative market for those who fear they see something or other going very, very right for the government or very, very wrong for the opposition parties. I must say I agree on the most seats, and I've been in the majority territory still for a while, and I am surprised. I've got to admit, I'm quite surprised we haven't seen more of a shift. I would have expected a cut of some kind. I think it's an opportunity. I definitely think it's an opportunity, because I would not expect the market to be that unaware forever. I would not expect nobody to go suddenly biting and thinking, well, I can get, 8 to 11 or whatever. I can get myself 5 to 6 about something that I think should be maybe 4 to 7 or whatever after this. I think that will happen. I just don't know when exactly.
Well, no, just to say that if you are in the sceptical camp, then 5 to 1 about Labour minority is a good price.
Yeah.
Because it is what it looks to me. It's one or the other. It's either Labour majority or one minority, and there is a fairly strong high chance that they do end up on 320, 315 seats, just govern on their own. In fact, those minority government prices, they're always overpriced, because there's always an assumption about a coalition, but we don't need a coalition. You just need some kind of arrangement, and the only coalition that we've seen in recent years proved an absolute catastrophe for the smaller party. So I think that would definitely, if there is a hung parliament, Labour would almost certainly be a minority government.
Yeah.
And do we have next Conservative leader?
We do. We can have a look at next Conservative leader.
Oh, yeah, I see there. Jeremy Corbyn, 8 to 1 to be Mayor of London. We were talking about that last night.
We did indeed. We'll talk about the mayoral contest quite a bit more, because the thing is, we are not all that far away from that. Here it is. Sorry, that's it. So after Rishi Sunak.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, so more contenders here.
I wouldn't touch Hunt with free money, because I think he'll lose his seat to Lib Dems.
Yep.
I say I'd be very strong on Cleverly. Gove, no. Is Gove even going to run again? I'm not convinced. Wouldn't have thought Tugendhat would hold Guildford. There's not a lot, is there? I don't suppose I suppose actually, maybe sounds silly, but I wouldn't have said Priti Patel's completely out of it, because I think she could hold her seat, and she could well be, if the Boris Johnson comeback thing just completely falls flat, she might end up being the reserve pick for the CDO and such people.
Yeah, Patel is interesting because she's been a bit more out the radar. I think the emergence of Badenoch has made her much more palatable. In general, I remember when Priti Patel was sort of the much pilloried villain of the piece. There used to be days you couldn't move anti-Priti Patel hate or whatever, people calling her evil, etc., whatever. And then also she managed to lose popularity, which surprised me at the time, her own base. But I can see some sort of a comeback, particularly also if she manages to appear more nuanced, right, when it comes to immigration or whatever. We should get the numbers down, but I certainly wouldn't say that. I don't think that's helpful to anybody. That sort of conversation or that sort of approach could lead to her making some sort of a comeback. I mean, I think it's a market to sit down, do some studying based on whatever projections you're making.
Let's go further. Let's go further down a bit. Let's just see. Is it anyone down there? Claire Coutinho, I don't know where her seat is, but got potential. Tadeem Zahawi, that's not going to happen, is it? I mean, he's just lost Stratford. Harper, said it before, backed him last time at 500 to 1. Harper, where is his seat? Where is Mark Harper's seat?
Searching now.
The acceptable face of the ERG.
Forest of Dean.
I think that's marginal. I think that would probably go late. If you go again, a lot's changed. I haven't looked at that seat for a long time. But if you go, I can remember backing that backing the Tories to win that, I think, in about 2005, and they were odds against for it. So it was one of those seats that was historically deemed a marginal, bit of a bellwether, I think, back then. Although I don't know whether that has, how much, to what extent that has changed in the years since.
Just on that note, the Greens had a great night in the Forest of Dean. I had a great time of it. They're now the largest group. 15 councillors, 11 independents, Labour 5, Tories 4, Lib Dems 3. Gloucester was bad for the Tories. Like, it's not got that much play in general, because we've all been thinking of the particular war areas, but like Gloucester, they got the right kicking.
Well, Gloucester's another seat that is a probable Labour cut. That's a good. It's a Labour would win Gloucester, I think. Labour did amazingly in Worcester, which is not a million miles from there. You've also got Stroud, which is like a sort of green stronghold, so to speak. But again, probably would go Labour in a general, but it's a particularly sort of eco area. You've got a lot of activists from Bristol. That would be probably their most fertile part of the country, I thought.
Yeah, interesting. Also notable, I think, today, you mentioned it earlier, but the coastal areas, traditionally, the Tories have been strong recently, where the sort of immigration, cultural argument, whatever you want to call it, has been waged hard. Went Labour today for the first time.
Yes, and it's very elderly. The coastal areas are generally relatively elderly. Yeah, exactly. So Labour, I think, again, this is the majority. This is where the majority lies. If they could sweep, like, top of head, maybe 8 to 10 seats, maybe coastal around the country. And again, I thought this because, the sewage scandal. I mean, I saw an Issues poll that said only 14% of local election voters deemed it to be one of the most important issues. But then less than 14% of the country live on the coast, right? Or live in areas that are directly affected by it. In the areas but it is affected, it's a really toxic issue for the Tories. And they are nearly all, if not all, held by them at the moment. No,
absolutely. Going to look at some projections now, because the excellent Josh, I'm going to call him Beyond the Top Line, because that's his Substack and he deserves a shout out. He's got a prediction.
Excellent.
And essentially, if the Conservatives are on track with his thinking, to lose 1,015 councillors.
Wow. Which would make Will, the other Will, winner of our bet, because he said 1,000, yeah?
Yes, it would do. Well, I remembered. I was going to come out to that. This is the thing, because he DM'd me about half an hour ago, and I replied very quickly under the table, because I thought it was Pushkin, but actually, no, you're right. It is Will.
Pushkin went 980 something, just below.
Yeah, it's going to be some interesting watching back to see who got closest. But he's got Labour with 550 gains, and the Lib Dems with 350, the Greens with 235, and also the Conservatives are on track to lose more than half their councils. This was half an hour ago, and they are currently on 27, down from 65. We'll have had more results since then, it's worth noting, but yeah, the scale becoming clearer here. In fact, actually, I can bring back some results and put them on the screen just to contextualize what exactly we're seeing here. So, right, you share. Right, here we go. Hopefully we've done this right. Correct. Great. So this is the state of play at the moment. I'll give it a refresh and we'll see if anything's changed. No, I think it's I think this is the as we are tally. So 404 gains for Labour, 771 losses for the Tories, 286 gains for Lib Dems, 178 for the Greens. With the councils, you really see Labour being the biggest winner, but the Tories also losing 40. And we are not, we've had the bulk of the results, but like there's still a fair amount to go. 190 out of 230.
Yeah, and though I think of those 40, that's where we're going to see the Lib Dems really jump up again.
So yeah, on course for about 1,000 losses. We actually haven't looked at the national projections, etc. I'll just
quickly just get that back up a minute. Last one, sorry. Right,
No,
I just want to say, I mean, look, I have been watching local elections since 99, I think 98, 99. Right, I don't remember the Tory opposition ones. I swear to you, I don't remember seeing a table like that. I can't ever remember a situation where the Tories weren't winning the local elections. I'm pretty sure I'm right about that as well, right? Because local elections favour them because older people vote and younger people generally don't, and
yeah,
all of that. And of course, for the first few of those elections I'm talking about, Labour were the government and they were suffering midterm protests all the time. So that is an astonishing figure. And then you have to remember that these seats don't include the inner cities, which are all Labour, Wales, which has swung sharply to Labour since the last election, and Scotland, which is currently swinging quite strongly towards Labour. I just don't see how anyone can look at these results and not say Labour majority.
Yeah, I also really didn't get the discourse around it. I get that it's a fun thing to do. I like projections and stuff. I love it. It's one of my favourite parts of the whole night. But I was quite surprised to see people looking at numbers, etc., and then going, "Oh God, they're falling short" or whatever. And not just listen. It's not for me to sort of take shots at people. I'm not taking shots. Like the work is accurate, but I think a lot of people seem to forget very happily that this is just a set of local elections for places in England, and then they sort of seem to go into hyper mode in terms of their hot takes on that. I mean, I couldn't agree more necessarily. Part of me wonders why that hasn't been clearer, particularly given that everybody in that community for ages has known exactly how big the Tory poll lead is, and everybody's been projecting literally day upon day or every 2 or 3 days, as some of the big accounts on Twitter do, tallies at the next general election. It did baffle me a bit, the sort of confusion with that. Just actually, by the way, I will probably go and bring up the Thrasher vote share and then John Curtis's, if I can find it.
Yeah, I mean, for us gamblers, this is great. The narrative influences the market always, and if people want to downplay this, great, bring it, because I'll keep taking that around even money about the Labour majority. It's certainly those Labour most seats, the money buying ones that Labour most seats and Labour Tory majority. I mean, there is no way. Right, given the current situation, that the Tory party have a 12.5% chance of winning majority next time. That's absurd.
Yeah, I couldn't agree. Okay, this was Professor Michael Thrasher's analysis, the national estimated vote share. This was after 1.7 million votes counted with 900 awards. I'd have to presume that there's more embedded data, so it'll be interesting to see if Sky Joy updated one. But long story short, about a 6 to 8 point lead or whatever, but caveat needed that the Lib Dems are on 18 to 20%. I would presume at the general election, if you held it tomorrow, they'd be 11 to 13%, based on the strongest recent polling, and that probably, I'd imagine, would benefit Labour. I'll actually go and bring up a couple of BBC.
Of course, the Lib Dems might surge a little bit now because they always have that problem that they just get ignored most of the time.
Yeah,
and when they do have a good a good break through in a local election or a by-election or the news, they can surge a little bit. Again, it's good for Labour. It's good for Labour because if they're going to gain seats, it's probably going to be, they're all going to be in the blue wall.
Indeed, lots of no party majority declarations you can see. We're going to scan through a few of them. A couple of losses back to back. That's Harborough and Cherwell. And if I can find it, there will be the national projected votes. Apologies, by the way, it's been a long old day and night. So I'm just going to be thinking of going to my own Twitter. Right, this is the Commons projection, but as you can see in the right bottom hand side, the caveats being there's no Scotland in this, there's no Wales in this. I've presumed that the Lib Dems, whilst having a pretty strong outlook, wouldn't do as well at general elections. So when you look at it, some might say that you'd be disappointed to fall below 326, but considering it's just England, actually it's pretty bang on for Labour. A very good night's work, I'd say. Also interesting on the gains thing, because there was lots of talk about how many gains, etc., they'd make, but should they end on 550 or whatever, you'd have to consider that. I mean, just from a Labour Party vote performance or whatever, not talk about the Conservatives or whatever. I think if you'd offered that to the party, they'd have taken it beforehand. 550 gains, I think most people would have bitten your hand off for it.
Yeah, it isn't an off-the-scale result. I mean, that was my exact line. I went under over 549.5 bet online. Yeah. So that would be bang on. Yeah, I guess. I mean, I suppose that's the story. I mean, looking there as well, there is one there. Basildon Conservative hold. Basildon's a seat that generally would form part of a Labour majority.
Yeah.
Right. So Basildon, Walsall, Stockton-on-Tees. There are a few places that you're going to see probably on a Labour target list where they didn't get a massively convincing result. So that would be the legitimate argument against a Labour majority. But personally, I think 226 for the Tories is very optimistic, and also, as always, and I mean, I'm really not having a go in any way at pollsters here or pathologists. This is the critical dynamic about what we do and what pollsters do, because a poll is a snapshot of public opinion, and it has very correctly strict, rigid criteria. Right, it can only focus on the data that is in front of you today. Right, it is not a prediction of the future. But what we can do, what betting markets can do, what analysts can do to predict the future is we say what's happened today, how does it affect tomorrow?
Yeah.
And, we've already discussed this. No way is any of this good for the Conservative Party. It's going to probably make things worse, right, from a very bad position. And you've also got these other factors that, of course, they're basing a projected national share on an election that didn't include the Tory right-wing rivals.
Yeah.
Could well take 6 to 8%.
Actually, how do you view reform, right? Because for a while they've polled a not insignificant number nationally. I can't imagine that these results would make them any quieter, them and their supporters. No. There are plenty of people, Boris Johnson adjacent types who are unhappy with Sunak's leadership. What do you think their prospects are sort of longer term in the run up to a general election?
Well, I think that they are. I don't think as a party themselves, I think they have got extremely limited potential. Right? They are just, to my mind, they are a far right libertarian party. Right? That's their brand, and that's got a limited amount of appeal. But the network behind reform, Farage, Tice, their backers, etc., their media outlets, they have shown before that they have a direct line to the Tory base, so to speak, right? And they can dramatically influence what happens in the Conservative Party. So again, as you say, we know that what Boris Johnson and the CDO, Lord Cruddas, etc., are all going to do now. They're going to blame on Sunak. They're going to look to destabilise him. Nadine Dorris's book is coming out about the political murder of Boris Johnson. She has her show on Talk TV. Mog has his show on KGB News. So all of that is going to remain a very, very powerful narrative amongst the Tory base. And as they head into a almost certain defeat, where the donors are walking away, where the activists are walking away, they're going to have a lot of leverage within that. So I don't think they can win a seat. I think their performance in by-elections as well before is just abysmal. I mean, you would have expected them to be picking up. If they're 6 to 8% nationally, a small party, right, in a low turnout by-election, you would expect them to be getting at least what they're getting nationally, not losing deposits, maybe even 10 to 15, but they're not. But they do have, I think, a lot of power within the right-wing ecosystem.
Okay, interesting. I'm going to bring up another piece of geographic data. This is from the excellent Dr. Will Jennings. Will Jennings,
another excellent follow, really excellent follow.
Indeed, yes, he's really worth paying close attention to. And we've been talking about this, so we might as well continue in this vein. Regional breakdowns.
Okay.
So Yorkshire and the Humber, West Midlands, the Southwest, the Southeast, Northwest, Northeast, East of England, and the East Midlands. Paints a real clear picture here. Although I am interested, there is no green showing. This has been calculated after 1,566 wards.
And this is this isn't unpredictable, is it? I think we knew that the Labour surge, so to speak, swing, was less so in the east of England and East Midlands than the West Midlands, and likewise the North East versus North West. Although the North East is pretty decent, actually. That's pretty decent, 7%. There will be a lot of seats. As far as that potential Labour majority, where will those seats? There will be a load of them in the Midlands. There's quite a few in the Northwest and the Northeast, which they're going to get. I would have said, in a way, the biggest takeaway from that for me is the Southwest. The Tories lost more in the Southwest than anywhere. And Labour, outside Bristol and Plymouth, they're virtually absent in the Southwest. So, very good. And there's a lot of seats in the Southwest that would be vulnerable to a Lib Dem comeback. That was always their historic base.
Yeah. No, I agree with you. It's interesting to see it by region, especially because it again brings the sort of dual that real challenge. Not that they're putting up much resistance, but that real headache of trying to defend across not only like a big political landscape, but in general a really wide amount of areas where it's very difficult to be, especially if you're in power, all things to all voters on that count. It'd be difficult for any party, let alone one I think that's in the difficulty the Tories currently are. By the way, if you are watching and there are a few of you here, do feel free to throw a question or two at us. It's much appreciated whilst I try and extricate myself from this screen sharing. There we go. There we go indeed. Anyhow, gonna have a look actually some of the odds we had previously and just see, because these results will be in. We'll start actually with Dacorum, where no overall control was the 20 to 21.
Remind me where Dacorum is. Sussex.
Yeah, I have to be honest with you. I was amazed the place was even called Decorum.
Yes,
And it is in Hertfordshire.
Hertfordshire.
Yes, that's local government district in Hertfordshire. That was just about odds on to go, no overall control. The Lib Dems took it at 2s, the Tories were 3s, Labour were 33s. East Cambridgeshire, again, not one of the most surprising.
That's got to have gone in.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm seriously look. I mean, again, not my thing, but I was really looking at the 2 to 7 there, Lib Dems, and just thinking big figures.
Here's the thing with East Cambridgeshire, one of the shocks of the night for the betting, because it stayed Tory.
Wow. So there you go. So there's your ultimate proof that we don't half the time on this show. So I've just put up a 2 to 7 loot.
It really does all happen here. An 18-year-old also took a seat there. So, yeah, one of the more interesting backstories of the night. Next up, in the seeing how they did round of this stream, is Sheffield.
No overall control.
Sheffield, so council, no overall control. I'll give the, also before I say the results, a straight fight according to the market between no overall control and Labour. And no overall control retained it. I think it was fairly close, but they failed to retake they failed to retake it. And no party really gained ground there, which is interesting. Onwards to South Oxfordshire. Betting for this was no overall control 4 to 9, 13 to 8 Lib Dems, 25 Tories. And if we've got the results here, I don't think we got the results declared yet, but I'll have a look on the Sky map.
I was watching.
Not yet declared. That'll be interesting. But we were 4 to 9. It was no overall control. 13 to 8 Lib Dems, 25 to Tories. Stockports.
No overall control.
Indeed, it remained no overall control. That
I think it was odds on, wasn't it?
It was actually
Yes.
6. Lib Dems were odds on at 8-13.
Really? Okay. Right.
Labour were 12s. Walsall remained Tory.
Yeah.
That was expected. 5s on. No overall control was 4s. Labour majority was 14s. West Berkshire, I believe, is it? It's not in yet. Lib Dems 4 to 11 there. No overall control 5 to 2. Tories 11. We have to.
This would be Newbury's and places like that, wouldn't it? West.
Yeah, I imagine so. And now we've got York, which we know the result because we discussed it, and Labour managed to take it from no overall control at 25 to 1. Almost certainly the biggest priced winner we have for this year's local.
There's a real lesson there, isn't there, about local election bettings and the seat markets, where there is value to be had on the outsiders. I think we saw this last time as well, where we saw some really great Lib Dem gains in places where they weren't sweeping. But, you know, I mean, let's say those 2 results that stand up there, East Cambridgeshire, which seems to have completely defied the national sweep. You know, it was 2 to 7 to go Lib Dem. You'd have thought it's perfect. And York, I mean, you know, that wasn't even on anyone's radar, Labour winning York.
Yeah.
And there's others, of course, the places that there were no odds on, like Bracknell Forest. I mean, that's an incredible result. Forest, Labour winning that.
Yeah, it absolutely is an incredible result. So that so those were all of the seats basically where we had betting for this year's local elections. Just going to have a look quickly at the latest comings in. We have a little bit of an update. So 192 councils now declared. I think a couple more Tory losses in terms of seats. Who has just declared? Let us find out. The Lib Dems have gained Surrey Heath as of 10 minutes ago. A change of
Michael Gove's seat.
Yes. And not even remotely close as well. 14 gains individually in that council. The Tories lost 12. Go figure, as the kids say. And some comments from Mayor of Tees Valley, Ben Hoochin. He's told Radio 4's PM programme that the poor Tory performance is partly a result of the turmoil and upheaval of the last 12 months. There's been an issue that the Labour Party has been quite successful in making this a referendum on the government. It was very much about the cost of living, NHS. We could have done better at being able to tackle these questions. The risk is that we've shot ourselves in the foot of the party for so long now. People are frustrated. People don't feel that they can vote for us. And what is interesting, and we saw it on the ground in Teesside, it's more that the Conservative Party is in free fall at the moment, and the Labour Party aren't particularly making any ground. So that's, I think, the latest big comment I've seen. The first big comment I really heard was from Johnny Mercer, who basically sort of admitted that the Tories had got a proper kicking. Labour have gained Cheshire, West and Chester, previously hung.
Yeah, I don't think that's really very surprising, to be honest.
Not very surprising. The least surprising news of all, I wonder what price you could have got if you'd asked us for this, is that Labour have held Liverpool. So good to see a 1 to 5,000 shot.
Liverpool? Liverpool?
Labour have held Liverpool.
Surely, is Liverpool up for grabs? I don't think it was running, because that's a metro area.
Yeah, they've had elections here today. Labour have held them as of about half an hour.
It's not surprising at all. That's quite odd. I would have thought, because you have the metro mayor, don't you? It would be that year. It would be in the same year, that at the same cycle. But
I would have thought so. Labour are now the largest party in local government for the first time since 2002. They've got the largest amount of councils, etc., in local government. I mean, just thinking ahead, that is going to be, I think, really quite important for a potential administration, a potential Labour premiership of Keir Starmer, right? If you want to get stuff done or whatever, having lots of people in local government on your side, particularly if you want to try and tackle some of those problems, I think is going to be a really big part of what he's trying to do, particularly if you're going to try and move on housing, etc. By the way, very interesting. I've heard nothing today really about housing, apart from people arguing about targets, which I think is very interesting, considering that it's definitely a big Tory failure, which is costing them votes in some areas of the country. Although it's a tricky one with, so Greg, that is Greg Hands himself coming to correct me. But no, it very interesting to see that. What else I go and see? That is.
Sorry, I missed that. Sorry, I was just
No worries.
tweeting you, actually.
Anyway, after all of those calls, I'm afraid I'll just have to get back to Mr. Hands and colleagues later. We are currently with an updated total of a milestone of sorts, because the Lib Dems have made it past 312 gains and the Conservatives have now had 813 losses. For those tracking Labour, 424 seats gained, 19 councils, The Greens are going to pass 200, I'd have thought, soon. Latest declarations, Swale, Thanet, West Berkshire, Cheshire West and Surrey Heath, the two Lib Dem gains, the Conservatives there, of course, being, the most significant there. Talking about the next general election, I know this is a bit of a tangent because we had no local elections there, but Wales is not somewhere I've heard talked about much. What was your last thinking on that, and what effect it might have on general?
Huge swing to Labour there, because of course Wales was probably the most extreme end of the 2019 Johnson Brexit swing. You could have places there that were just baffling how they could have voted Tory. The things that have never been in play. Off the top of my head, I'd say there's about 8 to 10 really easy, obvious gains for Labour. Of course, we saw this even when they were struggling earlier in the Parliament. To take like during the so-called vaccine bounce that night, so we had Hartlepool. On that night, Labour did amazingly well in Wales, right? And I would have thought that it was. Again, that's the low-hanging fruit for Labour that they're going to pick up. Wales isn't naturally Tory. It's a much more leftish country than England. The areas that voted for Brexit are often pretty deprived, right? And they will not have taken back control or seen the benefits, so to speak. I think they easily take those. Again, we go back to these seats last night, but Labour have done amazingly well in. They really aren't generally very suitable for Labour at all. For the last decade, the Labour vote has been inner cities, university towns, and sometimes Wales, right? And we know that again the Scottish electorate has been voting SNP in the past. So I would have thought that most of the seats that weren't up for grabs last night are pretty fertile territory for Labour.
Yeah, would agree. I would agree with that. I think it's interesting people sort of forgetting that in their overall analysis of the general election. And yeah, I think it's really worth putting that in context and thinking about what this means for the party, etc. Because you'd expect Labour gains in Wales as well as Labour gains in Scotland, and then that does change the calculus quite a bit. Latest hold is South Staffordshire for the Tories.
East Staffordshire, that's another incredible Labour game earlier on. East Staffordshire, not on anyone's radar. Again, you would have got huge odds on that.
Yeah, I could imagine so. There have been it's interesting because there have just been all day a lot of sort of wow moonshot results, like the sort of not the verbal feeling, but the sort of representation basically of a mega swing. Also, the BBC have done us a little bit of a favour, and they've taken a look at something we were discussing earlier. This very much was the two important gains here, and they've got analysis.
Amazing gains. So there's a few seats here last night that really stand out for me for Labour. And the reason they stand out is they are archetypal Middle England, right? They're the places that actually they lost in 2010 and they haven't even looked close to getting back. Erewash was one of them, because again, if you look at the demographics of lesser educated people and less diverse electorate and age and everything, Erewash is a disaster for Labour, right? And that's why it's gone that way. That's the thing that Robert Kilroy came way back. Robert Kilroy silk targeted Erewash with his party Veritas. That they sort of obviously saw that as right for right populism way back. and that's gone Labour. Swindon, which is arguably the bellwether town in England, that went Labour. And as we discussed last night on air, Tamworth. Tamworth is one of those Middle England places that had long gone. And even a year ago, when we were looking at a potential by-election there for Pincher, very few people were giving Labour much of a prayer of winning it. And then finally Dover, which, although Dover isn't, obviously less Middle England than the others, the fact that the Conservatives have centred their campaign around stopping the boats, and yet Labour have won Dover is incredible, really. It's an incredibly bad result for the Tories.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more with that. Oh, it's a results breakdown in maps and charts. I might have a look at this. So this is the spots, and actually it does sort of show the wall situation. We can look at the results, look at the ones that changed hands, and you see the clustering there with Lib Dem gain stuff. West again, sea of yellow. Southeast, you'll see of yellow. There's Stratford-upon-Avon and Walter Midlands in the north. You've got some Labour gains, some big Labour gains there. Actually, one thing I do want to check on is how the independents are doing, because there was some talk about them previously. If we have a look, oh, by the way, the UKIP white.
So UKIP have lost all of their 22 councillors, it looks like, or so far.
Yes,
that's not surprising. Yorkshire Party up to 3.
Yorkshire Party up to 3. As you can see, disappointing for Reform UK. And plenty of no overall control. By the way, there will be some names which, if you're not always following politics, you won't recognise them just as much. Independents, etc., and others. These include groups like the Ashfield Independents, who are so well organised. They're essentially their own political party. So I think it's worth having a look. If we're looking at the latest tally, 900 losses so far for the Conservatives. It's going to be down to the wire whether they get 4 figures. What price did you make it 4-figure loss?
How many we've got left? How many?
I think we've got.
Let's go to the top of it. Go to says how many councils there are left.
200.
So there's still 30 councils. So there's roughly 1 in 7. Yeah, I would go 3 to 1 on 1,000 or more.
3
to 1 the other way.
My goodness. What awful night has been for
so, which is a catastrophe. You know, there's no other way.
Yeah,
900 is a catastrophe. You know.
Yeah, this is the thing. Yeah, it's interesting that there's been like the big failure of expectation management here, because I think the 1,000 was definitely not said as a joke, but now with that here, basically waiting for it to tick over. Which is really quite incredible.
I'm struggling off the top of my head to think of a more extreme set of local election results ever, because of that. You know, the expectation management thing is something they work out quite meticulously to set a figure that they can't go wrong on. And they've gone wrong. It looks that way.
Indeed. Labour have gained Thanet.
Which, as Emma was saying, you know, that's the sort of place, exactly the sort of place that, you know, there was a time at Labour's peak when they were, oh my goodness me, really?
Yeah, so Sky News projection of national estimated vote share has Labour with 36% to 29% for the Tories, 18% for Lib Dems, 70% for others. 298 8.
Look, all I can say, I mean, look, maybe they're, I'm not going to argue with, psephologists, proper psephologists, and it's certainly an argument that we have to factor in about the majority. Personally, I think when we have all of the candidates and everything sorted out around the boundary change, exactly what we're dealing with, I will run through all these seats individually. I would be very surprised if if my numbers can't anywhere near 238 for the Tories.
Yeah, I would agree with this as well. I mean, obviously, we got to caveat this with a lot, because you're missing out Scotland and Wales anyway. I don't know how many seats Scotland that Labour were on in Scotland in the latest projections, but I know it had jumped up substantially with the cratering of the SNP vote.
Well, they were talking earlier about 12 to 15, but once again, I go back to this distinction between psephology and what we do, because of course, if they're saying 12 to 15 seats, they are looking at the very recent polls in Scotland, right?
Yeah.
But the dynamic that we've been discussing in Scotland that's happening is yet to fully play out. The SNP are in absolute turmoil. They are split down the middle. There's an ongoing criminal investigation, right? Their absolutely brilliant and very electable leader is no more, and they're replaced by someone who has very low approval ratings and who's coming under fire from half the party, right? So it is not at all beyond the realms to think that there's a further 4 or 5% swing from SNP to Labour that is not yet in the polls. And if you get that 4 to 5% swing, then we're going a lot more beyond 12 to 15 games. We might be up to 30, right, which would make life a lot easier. So I would, I'm not going to argue with Rawlings and Thrasher and John Curtis, who are absolute legends at this, but they are merely talking about a snapshot in public opinion. And I would say that the takeaway from this is catastrophe for the Tories, major momentum for all the other three parties, right? Who are then highly likely to tactically coalesce at the election, and that will particularly favour Labour.
Yeah, I would agree with this. Also, I mean, to be fair, Sam Friedman, man who used to formerly work in government and who now runs Comment is Freed Politics and Policy Substack.
Yeah, another excellent follow. Another really excellent follow.
Indeed. He's pulled their punches. Honestly, no idea why people are running general election projections off a data set which has 40% of the England vote going to Liberal Democrats, Greens, or Independents. You might as well make some numbers up. And that seems to be the popular feeling as well from Twitter, which I think is understandable. As fun as the projections are, we're dealing with a vastly different data set. It might have been more useful, say, if uniformly maybe all of England was going to the polls, etc. But that's the latest from.
Look again, if we're right, and these are underestimates, right? This is no bad thing. It's a good thing for us as gamblers, because it gives more of an opportunity. It means odds will hold up. And it's also, I would say, a good thing for Labour, because the one problem you would have with Labour is guarding against complacency. You've got to guard against complacency. You do not want a situation where people aren't that into Keir Starmer, aren't that into Labour, but it's widely assumed they're going to win, and then people don't turn out. But I think as it stands, you're going to get a highly motivated anti-Tory vote.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, to be fair to Labour, to give them their dues, or at least to give Labour organisers their due, there had been a lot of talk about basically how we can't think, or Labour saying we can't think, we're over the line, etc. I think this sort of result, basically banging on the sort of 9 or 10% lead, is probably just in that sweet spot in terms of making everybody feel confident because you've won a load of target seats, but make everybody motivated as well because you can foresee big gains at the next general election, but not something that you would call, say, in the bag.
No.
So no, I think that's you know, a good point and very helpful. As you can probably see on your screen, we're going to stick with the online bits and projections here because I'm very invested now in seeing exactly where the numbers end up. And also it's handy because we can see, or you can see everything we can see here. We've got 204 declarations out of 230 councils, Labour gaining 19 councils, Liberal Democrats gaining 9, the Tories losing 41 overall, winning Torbay, Slough and Wyre Forest, and the Greens winning in mid Suffolk. We'll roll through these as they come. With Wirral and Canterbury, no change. There's no party majority. Derby also staying, no overall control. If you've got any questions, do get in touch. We are here, I think, until it's all over in terms of at least the... Oh, got a bit of breaking news, but basically until the final results come in, I think we will be here. So let's see if there's any questions on YouTube. No questions on YouTube, but do get in touch. Be lovely to hear from you if you're there. And on Twitter, nothing yet there. Let's have a look at what's what's being said. Okay, on course for 1,067 losses. 1,067 losses. My God, my goodness. It would be a massive blow for them to get over that 4-figure losses. Any local results? No change at Spelthorne, no change at Swale. Ticking ever closer. Yep.
One other betting market that we were that's crossed my mind, of course, is the Boris Johnson leader at the next election, 25 to 1, 25 to 1 on Betfair. Don't think it will happen. Hope it doesn't, because I've got bets from long ago and not being leader at the next election. But I could see that moving a little bit. See a bit of trading potential there.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I do think that people, I mean, there's already calls for Johnson to sort of be back, and already people are, the usual stick of, oh, why did we knife the most successful leader we've ever had, the greatest human being in history, all of that stuff. So he passed lead at the next election. I mean, he is currently an 11-2 shot. It'll be interesting to see if that was to come in, because acolytes of his do have the perfect excuse, basically, to go for it, really. So I would not be surprised, basically, to see move for Johnson. And interestingly, actually, we've not heard so much. We've not heard so much, I think, about who's getting the blame necessarily for this in terms of the Tory sniping. I've seen bits and pieces on it, but I haven't seen like the full-blown wars. Usually that I think you'd expect.
No, I mean, at the moment, it's the people who were cheerleading him to come back last October. It's those people. It's the CDO. and their little group, so to speak. The point is that, again, if the polls are not improving in 3 months, 6 months, it's panic stations.
Yeah, that's true. I would see also the thing about it. I would see no conceivable reason for the polls to change, because usually poll changes come with either a big achievement, or steady economic progress that's noticeable, or a victory in an area people really care about. And the thing is, the biggest issues, which we looked at yesterday, are also the hardest tasks. Nothing will move quickly with the NHS, nothing will likely move quickly with the economy, nothing will move quickly with house building, and nothing will move quickly with public services. So where do you get like a sustained set of victories, unless you're introducing, say, legislation, etc., to say we're tackling the problem? And even then, I mean, look at the gambling white paper as an example of how long it can take to implement something, right?
Yeah. And then it's got to be felt on the ground.
Yeah.
Right? It's not going to happen. I mean, even announcing a lot of house building times, which are tomorrow, even if they backtracked on that, again, they're not going to be built in time for the next election, are they?
That's true. That's so true. Right. Two announcements to make. The first, via the excellent James Bridden, is that Theresa Coffey, the Tories lost her constituency. East Suffolk went to no overall control. 16 Green councillors, just one ahead of the Tories. The Lib Dems gained 8 there, Labour gained 5, the Greens gained 12.
Okay, that will be coastal, right? East Suffolk, that will be coastal.
Sizewell Sea and sewage scandal. Thank you very much for our man on the ground, James Bridden. An excellent follow at James_Bridden.
Yeah.
Always worth talking about. And the next is, I'm calling it, I've seen enough. It is now statistical inevitability that the Tories will lose over 1,000 councillors. That will happen. It is just a matter of when it will be confirmed. And Labour are heading for a majority in Brighton and Hove. They've gained it. Labour have gained it from the Greens. That's interesting. But yes, huge moment. That the absolute banter outcome, some might say, considering the Greg Cans comments last night, is likely to be inevitable. It's just a matter of time. If we look at the updated results, 923 has jumped to 925. That's with 206. The Lib Dems have gained South Oxfordshire in the last few moments. And if I look at Sky,
one minor saving grace here, I think, at least in the short term, Sunak, of course, is the coronation. This won't, we're going to talk about this tonight. There'll be barely a mention of it over the weekend in the media.
Yeah, very, very lucky, frankly, that the timing has coincided with that, because, my God, could you imagine a full weekend of this? And yeah, you're right. Again, also, in a way, that might not be the worst thing for those seeking to back Labour the next election, in the sense that the coronation flushes out a lot of the harder hitting, or basically it flushes out a lot of the news cycle, and as such, it distracts people in general. It could actually keep that price relatively well held up, particularly as the Tory supporting press will be all over the coronation from head to toe, and it's literally blocking out the TV channel. So yeah, a good point there. Right, the latest on the losses is, depending on where you look, either 935 or try and look at the results in full. Need a manual refresh. I think Sky's fallen a bit behind, but they might have a different system for the losses of the seats. But yeah, we're heading to over 1,000 for sure. I saw good estimates at 1,060.
Mansfield, Labour gained Mansfield,
Yep.
massive pro-Brexit seat, big red wall seat.
Indeed.
I mean, they're winning, a very impressive wide range of seats. There are places, yes, Dudley, Walsall, Stockton, where they've not performed as they might have hoped. But then you look at it and they've got Bellwethers, they've got Swindon, they've got Tamworth, they've got Kent, which is, as can't overstate how important that is for Tories and losing Kent, both parties. That's dire. And then they are winning some ultra Brexit red wall places like Mansfield and Stoke. So I really don't see where the weakness is, and this is without the other places they're making, without Scotland where they're likely to make significant gains, and Wales where they're going to make significant gains.
Yep, absolutely. By the way, the massacre in the southeast continues. On Lewis Council, 2 questions. First of all, guess who's the biggest party there?
In Lewis, I'm going to say Greens.
Correct. Guess how there were 19 Tory councillors there previously. How many lost their seats?
8.
19.
No.
Each and every one of them. 17 Green councillors now, 15 Liberal Democrats, and 9 Labour. That's Lewis Council just in.
Oh, wow.
Lewis Goodall of newsagents and global fame.
Again, I mean, that is a seat. Lewis, admittedly, it isn't indicative of anywhere because it's kind of famously a bit non-conformist and different. When the Lib Dems held that during the Labour years and the coalition, Norman Baker, who was a very maverick MP, to say the least, was the MP. But fundamentally, this is a wealthy part of Sussex, rural Sussex, right? It should be fundamentally Tory, and they've lost all their councillors.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, this countdown here is absolutely incredible. Just all falling like complete and utter dominoes. I'll look for more later results because we're going to get a few, I think, that will.
Oh, what was that one? West Bromwich. Just go back a sec. It's on Twitter. West Bromwich. Again, ultra Brexit seat. That was Tom Watson's seat at the last election, and there you have Labour getting 51%. Right, a seat that was so Brexit and so certain to gone that Tom Watson didn't even run.
Yeah,
and there they are winning by over 15%. It's astonishing.
indeed. So that's the latest. Forgive me whilst I fiddle a bit with the controls here. Comments from Emily Thornbury. Pretty happy. However, we still got a long way to go. The sort of results that we do need will be stupendous. We've got a mountain to climb, but we've got ourselves into a pretty good base camp and the view's all right. No mistake.
That's why this narrative suits them.
Yeah.
The last thing they want people to be saying is, oh, Keir Starmer's the Prime Minister-elect. That's the absolute last thing they need, right? Because the scrutiny will intensify immediately and people will look to undermine them. And I mean, I do think that the one thing that could save the Tories is unforced Labour errors. But given what we've seen under Starmer so far, whatever you think of him, whether you trust him or like him or anything, he does seem like a very competent strategist.
Yeah, I would say that. I think he goes for what is I don't think he's a risk taker, but I think that's due to the circumstance, the position that he inherited, and task basically that Labour has, which I think is why they're doing what they're doing. I mean, this also, I think, will have a really important legacy in the sense that it will give Starmer like an extra lung's worth of breathing space. It will be like being on the top of Snowdonia, etc., in the sense of questions this and questions that over whether he's the guy or whatever. And I think like there is still a need for Labour to have like the compelling vision, the big sell that they land on one or two areas before the next general election. But this gives him loads of time and loads of control and loads of space. There was a report from the Institute for Government which was advising him, I think, not to leave it too late in terms of getting his ducks in a row in terms of a reshuffle, etc. And all those little concerns, etc., all those little concerns, they can be pushed aside very easily because he's the joint biggest winner of the night. You know, he's got, but he's always been at the wheel. You know, he's long taken over the party, but in a really big way, it sort of stamps it home.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, think of the time, the plan from now on in time. Let's assume that the election is next autumn. So we've got about 16 months, maybe 15, 16 months. Coronation buries this tomorrow for the next few days. We're very quickly into the summer. People won't really be talking about this much during the summer. There's no point in making any big announcements then. We come back and we're probably at that point after a summer of recriminations. The Tories start this civil war. The civil war restarts. Natalie Dorris's book comes out, etc., etc. Those who wish to destroy them, like Reform, will ramp up their efforts. And if I'm Starmer, I'm thinking, well, you know, you're in a great position. You continue to just let that be the narrative, and then, you know, maybe in the new year, in 2024, that's when you start laying out your big pledges. And I think, and I've always thought that, I've said this since the start of this parliament, that's when they will pick up Labour. Because it will not be, I don't think it will be hard for them, given the dire state of everything, to make a set of pledges that are both realistic, you know, for example, on the NHS, on schools, on childcare, or housing, which they're guaranteed to outflank the Tories. There's just no way they can't outflank them on those issues. And I think that will be the final duck in a row. And at that point, it will just lead to a nightmare campaign for the Tories who can't really match it, aren't trusted, and don't really have an answer to what's happening in terms of this tactical pincer movement.
Yeah, I think that's pretty bang on. Actually, just out of interest, would you be inclined, were you Starmer, to make any sort of front bench changes? I don't mean massive sweeping ones. Like, I mean, would you be tempted to? Would you be tempted to change anybody, bring anybody in, or even tinker around the edges?
Well, I mean, to start, my view of reshuffles is they are just this absurdity for the media. You know, we see this over and over again, you know, that the party's going to reset. It's going to do this big reset with a reshuffle that involves a load of people who most voters haven't heard of, right, don't have an opinion of. And it's newsworthy for like 24 hours, 36 hours in the Westminster bubble. But he may want to do that because there may be people he wants to bring on. I can't particularly think of anybody who's likely. Can you? I mean,
no,
I've always thought Chris Bryant was pretty good, but I think also Chris Bryant's quite a sort of good partisan attack dog that maybe isn't suited to the front bench. So He might be one, but I'm struggling off the top of my head to think of anyone.
Yeah, I was also thinking this. I mean, I think there are like valid criticisms you could make about Labour, even with all this success in terms of strategy or whatever. But the front bench I've got to be honest with you, the front bench hadn't really been something I had ever thought of as a major Labour weakness, right? I mean, first of all, look at, okay, I admit it, okay, it's like 7 p.m. on the Friday of the results. I'm going to get a little bit partisan here, right? Look at the state of the actual cabinet. Anyhow, with Labour itself, I hadn't really felt that the front bench had been a major weakness, right? Starmer had a reshuffle a while back anyway. I didn't agree. I remember not agreeing with some of the decisions he made there particularly, but he did. I think one thing you might do, if you had a reshuffle and I was Keir Starmer or whatever, I might slim Angela Rayner's duties. The reason being is not to saddle her with about the 50 million jobs she's got at the moment due to like various circumstances, and also to maybe ask her what's your thing, what do you want to focus at, what do you want to target in particular, because I can't imagine her going into government and holding all of those roles in government. I think as a shadow in this kind of situation, it maybe works. I think if you're thinking ahead, and let's be honest, Starmer clearly is, Sue Gray, etc., all that, you might want to think, okay, let's cut the fat a little bit here with the deputy leader, who's likely to be, let's say, deputy prime minister. That would be my little change.
I don't get the. I don't. I'm not convinced that Starmer likes Rayner either. I mean,
no.
You know, I say that as someone. I mean, I'm a Labour person. I'd be far more in the Rayner camp than I am in the Starmer camp.
Same.
But I don't think he's. You know, she has her role because she had an electoral mandate to have that role, and he can't. And he tried a couple of years ago after the local elections to move her, and it didn't work, did it? So. I mean, you make a good point. She's got a lot on her plate at the moment. I don't think he's about to give her a big department. I think that, you know, he knows he can't touch her as being deputy leader, deputy prime minister. I mean, maybe she gets a sort of if they win, maybe she gets a sort of Chancellor of the Duchy of Lancaster or whatever, some kind of minister without portfolio sort of role where she can, you know, be the representative of the grassroots sort of thing in policy making.
Yeah, an editor at large role. I mean, I think that will do well. I think Starmer would be wise to utilise Rayner as well in terms of being an effective speaker and campaigner. I mean, obviously, maybe you wouldn't want her to go as far as she might have done at conference or whatever that time back. You wouldn't want any sort of slip-ups or incidents, although I don't think she's decided to say that again.
I'm not sure that hurt them. I'm not sure. I see. Look, you know, never ending. I mean, I may be, you know, talking my own positions up here. I'm quite aware of this, but my general feeling about British public life is we mince our words. We mince, or certainly the left does, right? It's okay for the press to go around calling anyone who criticises a war a terrorist appeaser or something. Yeah. Right? It's okay for them to do that every day for years. But apparently when you talk about the government, you can't insult them when, you know, you come under. I mean, look at the stuff that they say about Angela Rayner. Look at the stuff that they leak to the press, which is fake about her, right? And of course, the comments she made were misrepresented because they misrepresented it to say she was saying that Tory voters were scum. She wasn't. She was saying this banana republic scum government, which, well, I'm sorry, I think half the country agrees with that. I don't think they would mind. And again, if you look at America, you know, okay, I'm very influenced by American politics. You know, hands up, right? I admire American politics. I like the way it's done, etc. in many ways. But that's the thing. They do, they wouldn't get all worked up about a word like that in the way that the British political class does.
Yeah, that's true.
They'd understand that that it is a partisan game. There is no love lost here, and the people who voted for Angela Rayner as deputy leader of the Labour Party, who she represents, probably agree with that.
Yeah. No, I think it's a very fair point when it comes to that, and it'll be interesting to see. It'll be interesting to see how Labour campaign going on forward, if they get more aggressive, a little more on the front foot. But in general, like, I'm sure they're just reveling in that at the moment. Let's see. We got a couple more results. Tories hold Wyre, Labour hold Oldham. And the ticker is at 958. It's happening. 211 out of 230 councils. I actually wonder what this will end up at exactly.
I'll have a go. I'll say 1,043. Random call without knowing the councils involved.
1,043. I will go for. I'll go for 1,065. I'll overrag it a bit. But like, congratulations to Will Barber Taylor of the Debater podcast. Got to arrange some sort of prize for him because he's absolutely smashed out the park with that suggestion. Albeit Pushkin, if I was close.
Yeah, my 886 wasn't even close, was it?
Well, I was about 100 something below you. I think I went 750, which got.
Well, I mean, this was the par line, wasn't it? 750.
Yeah. 750 was the par line. Indeed, just having a look, where have we got that's left to count? I'll take a look at Sky for a moment. The map. Oh, Tories lost Canterbury, first time since 2005. Labour now the largest party, comfortably there. Double the seat of the Lib Dems in second. Tories lost 5 seats in Cheshire West and Chester. Bloody hell, 10 gains for Labour in Thanet. 10 gains. That is an eyebrow raiser. Even after today, that's an eyebrow raiser. Also, the Tories lost Tonbridge and Malin. They lost 11 seats. There's the largest party still, but the Lib Dems now have 11 seats. So, again, more, just in general, more losses for the Tories, however you put it. Right, the full election results here. We're still left to go. This big map here. Loads of places actually with, okay, these are the undeclared ones. So we got Horsham, Mid Sussex. This is a bit behind because Brighton has been declared. I know that. Arran, East Hampshire, Waverley.
These are the ones left, Jess. Sorry.
These are the ones
Horsham.
left.
Well, we've seen. Sorry. So what's not right? What we got? Not declared. New Forest. Yeah, that's. Look, these do look like the sort of places where they seem to be doing particularly badly to the Lib Dems, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Sussex.
Hampton, Vale, Whitehouse. I mean, some of these have been declared. Life things a bit behind. But
Bedford's quite a marginal place. That's a seat Labour used to hold, next to Milton Keynes, which is a very bellwether-y sort of place.
Indeed. So those are the ones still left to go, and Redcar in Cleveland, currently undeclared. That tick is a bit behind because we're at 958, now 979. I'm going to pop on on my phone here. I'm going to wait and see the moment because it is surely coming. The 1000th lost is absolutely now baked in things. So when it will happen remains to be seen. Also, just an interesting point, right? We got results still coming in. BBC News are covering the coronation right now, and I don't know what Sky News are doing. So let me just have a look. The coronation on both channels, on both big news channels.
Oh, that's that. It's done. We're done. Yeah.
Well, if nothing else, we outlasted. If you're still with us, you outlasted the BBC and Sky.
Yeah.
And I know that. So look, Channel 4 News. No, they'll be doing just normal news programs. So yeah, we're the last all-round people doing this on the internet, basically. Thank you to everybody who's managed to.
And it means and this now means that finally, after just working relentlessly for the last 5 weeks or something on snooker, cricket, politics, golf, everything, I get a weekend off. I can go to the beach in Greece. I ain't got to pay any attention to the coronation. Put my music on, have a swim. Lovely, happy days.
I am going to have, I need to sort a couple of things out, and then I'm going to have one of the hardest sleeps of my life. And when I wake, do you know what will happen? They'll be crowning him when I wake up, probably. And I have to be honest with you, I will not care one jot. It will have been worth it. By the way, can I just say now a huge thanks to so many people. 995, by the way.
Oh wow, that's a jump, isn't it? That's just jumped.
It's happening. We talked.
Yeah, I think you're right with your 1065. I think it's higher than I thought.
we talk for a minute, and then it happens. Like there's gotta be a way. There's gotta be a way to see it. But just before it happens. I just want to say thanks to a few people. Firstly, Paul, yourself for joining me twice, particularly given all that you've had. Emma for making the time yesterday. Jasny, Samurai, Pushkin Defier, and Torrin Wilkins from Centre. They're all excellent people, by the way. I know that there can be a lot of differing views on think tanks because they range from, in my opinion, the very, very good to the very, very bad. They are the very, very good. There's lots of good thinking at Centre.
Yeah, we had some great informed discussion last night. Real, okay, it's a bit nerdy, for most people, but it's great. I mean, really, really, really good chat, really well informed. And hopefully, we'll get some by-elections soon because we'll do it all again.
Indeed, yeah. There are a few cases, by the way, that I think people have forgotten, but there are a few MPs who are in a not inconsiderable amount of trouble. I would listen, if I had to bet, will there be a by-election before X or Y points, or will there be a by-election, or will there not be a by-election basically by, say, the end of this year? I'm definitely betting Prova. And it's happened. 1,000 on the dot. I will zoom in.
With how many councils to spare?
217 or 230.
So it's still it's happened with 13 councils. It's going to be 1,100, isn't it?
Yeah, gosh. The Conservatives lost Kings Lynn and West Norfolk, lost Lichfield. 500 mark passed for Labour, 400 mark passed for Lib Dems, 230 mark passed for the Greens, 450 councillors. Yeah, that's going to be a lot of people.
More than 100% gain.
Yeah, very, very impressive indeed, one must say. And yes, you are about to see me live tweet this, because it's definitely going down.
I mean, good luck spinning that away, right? Good luck trying to spin that away as not being anything other than a total catastrophe. 1,000 seats with 13 councils left to play.
Yeah, just absolutely incredible. I might actually search what the biggest losses are. Right. I'm interested to see because it will be noticed. 193 tweets. I think a lot of people are going to be asking of. Yep, 1,005 now. So literally with every second we're losing more and more. And yes, it has been widely, very widely acknowledged. Right, so let's go back to the live tracker. We'll follow in the other results as they come in. Labour have held Wakefield. We got another one in the locker about to declare. The Tory
Marshall. Oh, that's a surprising result. That is a surprising result to hold Sevenoaks. Sevenoaks is very blue wall, you know, very much sort of place the Lib Dems would be looking at. That's actually a good result. I mean, I guess, you know, obviously in some places there are particular local factors, and there are going to be some Conservatives who have strong local organisations with a good local record and a good rapport with the electorate. I'm guessing that those are the exceptions, because there are a handful of like pretty good holds for them, and yet they've lost well over 1,000 seats.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's have a look actually at the highlights if we got any on the left. It's a 9 point. 9 points for all Britain voted. By the way, Swindon, Medway, Dover, East Staffordshire, Labour, they're the biggest gains, presumably. Stratford, Dacorum, Windsor, Maidenhead, Southampton. So yeah, though that's the latest. The ticker 1,012 now.
It's just flying up suddenly, isn't it?
It is. We really need a way to watch it happen, as in actual real time. The official just be acknowledged. Just my entire timeline. 218 out of 230 to go. So let us see. Let us see exactly where it ends up. Because I'm pretty sure now that I would imagine within the next half an hour or so, we'll get these Lewis declarations. Who is that? Somebody very disgruntled. Indeed. By the way, that's it. I was midway through some acknowledgements. My apologies for getting so easily sidetracked. Huge acknowledgements to David Stewart and Josie Troney. They've put the back end stuff for this together, and really do appreciate it. Their very hard work on all things that we do here at Star, and also the fact that they tee me up, to go and do these live streams, etc. Particularly as it's been a really busy time, so much appreciate them and their questions. James Britton for his help. Also, not just that, but also the help when consulted. Sorry if I'm forgetting you, because there's been so many people I've been consulting with recently. It's been a whirlwind. Oh yes, of course, the trading team, led by Dave Jolly, John Brackenridge, Kit Gilmore, Ed Dark, Jordan Cox. You guys have all been fantastic, and I apologize for running out of steam a bit. We're all exhausted. It's fair to say. So yeah, you probably are now watching just a doom scroll and a live ticker that I can update as fast as I can, along with some drive-by memes, because you like to see some tweets in the ticker. I cannot believe somebody has decided to call this time. That's the downstairs door. I'll wait and see if they buzz again. And yeah, basically that'll be that. Sort of anything really to add?
No, I think we have covered everything in spades, and we'll continue to do so on the polling station as we close towards the election. Loads of good bets out there still. You know, you really feel more confident about having a bet on the general election after last night.
Indeed, yes. Right, I'm gonna see that is, and I'll come back very, very quickly. They're not to know. We've just passed 1,000.
Okay, so while I'm on here still and Will's away, I'll just run through quickly the bets that I'm now having today, looking towards. If you look, I mean, some of this obviously I appreciate won't be everyone's cup of tea, but I think there's some really great odds on bets here. And it's just tight. If you like tying, if you don't mind tying your money up for a year, you want to make some interest on that. 1.25, 25% profit on Labour winning most seats. To me, that's just an absolute gift. You know, yeah, there is a question about majority, but most seats require them winning, 70, 75, maybe 80 seats, probably even less now. The Lib Dems are doing so well. I think that's really well within range. Overall majority, as I was saying before, I'm looking here on Betfair. Conservative majority is 8.8, 9 to lay, 11% profit over a year. Cannot see that happening. If I'm wrong, come back, by all means shoot me for saying that. It's now I'm tipping up a 1 to 9 lose up, but I just can't see it happening. And I also think, just for a bit of fun, I think you get a bit of fun on 25 to 1 Boris Johnson to be Tory leader at the next election. I don't think he will be, but I do think there'll be some kind of attempt to shoehorn him back in.
Thank you very much for filling in there. Will has already claimed his prize in the DM. Good to have you with us, Will. Indeed, actually, I did forget to thank him. Let's have a look at the latest gains and then move on from there. 1,015 it is now. The Lib Dems have gained control of Horsham. Labour have gained South Derbyshire.
Another good win. South Derbyshire, marginal territory, bellwether territory. I can't stress enough. I just do not think this is as ambiguous as people are making out. I just don't see it. There is only one narrative out of this. It's a disaster for the Tories, and there is a tactical coalition building across the country against them.
Yeah, totally. Like it's a complete shellacking. It's a complete shellacking, or shellacking, I should say. Don't know why that was my word of choice. Thumping, thrashing, whatever you might call it, but yeah, this is a giant gut punch to the Conservatives, and we've still got, I think it's 10 councils or so to go. How many are in? I need to go and look. It's 218, but I think that might be
12 less.
12 less. So 12.
Yeah, and so even to get to 1,100, that requires basically 7 councillors lost per council. And look what we've been seeing. That's happening, isn't it? It's going to be 1,100, isn't it? Tucker.
Yes. What was that? What was that about? We can go on a bit of a.
I mean, here's the thing. I mean, next year. I mean, this is out there, but I think that autumn is very much the likeliest time for a general election, which means it's going to very much clash. The campaign is very much going to clash with the US election, which, as we've discussed many times on the Poll Station, and will continue to do so, looks like being an absolute shit show, with all manner of upheaval and potentially violence and general insanity. And I'm wondering, well, 2 points. First of all, this is not good for us. I mean, I know we love it, but I mean, how me and you are going to get any sleep next? Awesome.
we will be absolute husks. Because, gosh,
and I mean, I'll have to bet on sport at the same time. Where's the time for this, right? Yeah. But second, is there? I mean, this is a bit out there, but I'm wondering. I mean, is there a crossover here? Is there going to be an influence here? Again, I think it's very bad for the Tories because clearly, this is one of the changes in recent years. You go back to say pre-Trump, go back to say the Romney-Obama election, 2012. Generally speaking, MPs and other political figures dare not get involved in American elections. They would always just play the diplomatic card and say, their country is their business, we're not getting involved. But that isn't the case now. There's lots and lots of stridently pro-Trump Tories out there who will tweet on his tweet stuff in favour of him, who will tweet the same conspiracy theories, etc. Right? How is that going to help the Tories? I mean, we did a poll at Betfair at the last election. We've commissioned a poll for how the British electorate felt about the US election, and it was 80% to 20% for Biden. Now, that US election, with Trump doubtless running on election denial and potential insurrection, failure to condemn people. I noticed the Proud Boys were convicted yesterday. His army. So that will be an ongoing global news narrative all through 2024, to the minute the primaries start. And I wonder, I mean, I can't imagine that those CDO type of Tories are not going to be going all in with Trump again. The Andrea Jenkins of this world and the Farage people, Nigel Farage and his acolytes, the Reform people. And I am wondering how much, again, it can only damage the Tories then. I can't ever remember the 2 elections coinciding like that. Don't think so.
It would be interesting to see what that would do for interest and turnout. Back-to-back bonanza. I mean, the thing is, the American election, as we both know, it's a sprint. It's a marathon run at a sprint's pace. I mean, we're already well into it, right? And it's May 2023, and we're already well into it. We're already in a cycle. The cycle there is 18 months to a year. I wonder what it would be like in terms of, say, if they took it the whole 5 years, whatever, and they went December, because they know they'll lose whatever, and they just want as much time power back to back in those months. It would be very interesting to see how that affects everybody, not just the punters, etc., but also just in general discourse, or whatever, any carryover effect. And like you say, also that lot going in with Trump, it will be interesting to see if there's any crossover. Speaking of tiredness, do you have 2 or 3 more days in you to postpone your lovely beach excursions? Because Redcar and Cleveland Council have paused counting until Tuesday.
I can leave them to it. I think
we'll leave them to it. It's fine. The bulk of our work is done here. But I think that means this will actually technically go until Tuesday. Only 2 results to come. And after a second recount, there's going to be a third recount, and it's going to begin at 10 a.m. on Tuesday. So there will be 1 council short. We have lost 1,027 Tory councillors. Labour have gained 512. Those are the very latest. I should expect we will see plenty or a few results come in fairly short order. Do forgive any of the meetings you might see. Have we got any questions? Somebody saying that Lib Dems will never get 20 at the general election. Put in that caveat, to be fair. I did put in that caveat.
No, they won't. They'll get probably 13%, maybe. And most of the other 7 go over to Labour.
Yeah, I would have thought so too. Some analysis from Helen Katz. That feels actually now sort of incredibly understated piece of analysis, I must say. No personal slight on Helen Katz, of course. No change at Cheshire East Council, so no party able to achieve an overall majority. That means we are 10 essentially to go because we won't get red cast. So we're into the last 10. This is how the map looks in general. As you can see, that red and yellow much more pronounced now in terms of changed hands. Probably even more pronounced, but that's sort of the picture. I should, of course, well, you know by now, nothing in Wales, nothing in Scotland, and also nothing around London either. 7:36, and if you're still going with us, and I believe there are people actually genuinely still going with us.
Fair play, guys. Fair play.
Yeah, I mean, my God, my good God. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Hashtag Russia is collapsing. Twitter is trending on Twitter. Yeah, I saw the Prigozin's withdrawal, Wagner's withdrawal from this morning. That's quite significant. Feels like a potential coup in the air.
Yes, we might as well go full international in the posting. Finally, he's been. I've been trying to follow that as closely as possible, and I think this week he's finally actually doing the withdrawal from Bakhmut, if I remember correctly. I mean, it feels like there's been a lot of pretty significant escalation in terms of optics in the last week. I've certainly seen more, particularly with the drone incidents either side. And I imagine that there will be basically major moves going down there, and of course solidarity to everybody affected with in that conflict, of course. Righto, see if there's anything else coming in. So Daisy, one step back. 1029.
Without the council even going, yeah. It's going to hit 1100, isn't it?
It will do. Yeah, it will do.
Goes to show how hard these things are to predict, doesn't it? It really does. You know, all of the cephalogical minds in the country have been focused on this for weeks and weeks, and nobody predicted it this much, not even close. And like we said, there are a number of upsets in the individual council bidding, some really big upsets.
That's true. That is true. One of the things actually that will be a lot of fun at the next general election, particularly if this persists, will be seat betting, right?
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, it's always some of the most fun you could have at any general election.
Definitely.
But this is going to be crazy to try and work out, because there are areas in play that are just ridiculous, feel just ridiculous. But I mean, look at it this way. We've got a couple of prices out at the moment. We haven't just had the Corbyn price, we've also got Dominic Raab. to win any seat. He's 5-2 to win any seat. The guy is one of the most high profile Tories going, and it's just a racing certainty now, assumed gone. I know that there'll be lots of people interested in betting against Johnson. I wonder what price. Oh gosh, what price would Labour go to beat him? Should he stand? Actually, do you think he'll stand?
Right.
Actually,
Yeah.
Let's ask the question. A few of these who will stand. Right. Let's talk about Rab.
Well, there's going to be an absolute exodus of Tories in next year looking for jobs in the private sector, right? Looking for a parachute. I'm sure, given his connections, given his seniority, there is something there for Rab. But it would be quite an admittance of defeat, wouldn't it? That, you know, a former leadership candidate, a prime ministerial candidate in 2019, deputy prime minister, former deputy prime minister, to actually give up. But he's going to lose Esher and Walton. That's just going to happen.
Yeah.
And doing a chicken run is never easy. It's never easy. And, you know, in the current climate, with the Tory brand being where it is, with his personal brand being where it is, you have to think that would be a real hiding to nothing if he was, you know, to be moved to a safe seat. And what is a safe seat? There aren't that many left. So perhaps he doesn't stand at all. I mean, I would lay that 5-2 all day long. Doesn't appeal at all to me.
Yeah, I'd have to be in agreement there. Right, Boris Johnson, does he stand?
I don't think so. I think that there is a concerted effort on behalf of Team Boris in the next few months to get him back in. It will fail. And at that point, it's too late to do a chicken run and too ridiculous. The same things all apply. He'd probably lose somewhere else as well. And yeah, he'll stand down. He'll stand down and go and make a fortune in the private sector.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree. I mean, if he doesn't, it's a delicious betting opportunity if you can get a semi-decent price. I think there's a lot up in the air. I think there's a lot up in the air. Here's one, just thinking, who's the biggest name that you can see deciding not to go for it next year?
Possibly Rab. I think Badenoch will run. She's got every. I mean, all the ones who are serious contenders for the leadership, they're going to run, right? I think there's more chance of Boris running than Rab.
Yeah,
simply because of his ego and denial, you know, about reality. Other than them, they're kind of gone already, aren't they? You know, Javid won't run. Sajid Javid won't run. Bromsgrove. Graham Brady's already stood aside, said he's standing down, hasn't he? Yeah, I'd say Rab. I think it's that's the call. I mean, he's the, well, I know he's no longer deputy prime minister. Oh, possibly Jeremy Hunt. Makes you wonder. Makes you wonder because again, and Gove, of course, can't see Gove running. Well, we didn't think he was going to serve in the cabinet. I mean, general expectations were he was going to be the editor of the Times.
Yes.
And again, Gove and Hunt are both very employable characters outside politics.
Yeah, I think anybody. I think that anybody remotely like finance adjacent, right, who has those sorts of connections will probably go and pack it in, right? Like obviously Javid, JP Morgan, Hunt Chancellor, like no telling Rob can definitely get himself one of those jobs. He used to be a lawyer anyhow. I think all of those think all of them. I think they'll go. If the opportunity comes and it's big enough, unless their seat is so safe, I guess. But depending on how big the ego is or whatever, and how much more money I guess you think you can make outside of politics. Not everybody does it Johnson style. I think a few will decide to step down. There's a list somewhere being kept of all the Tory MPs that have decided to stand down. I will try to find it.
I think Liz Truss will run. She'll stay in. I don't think Liz. I think Liz Truss will stay in politics as long as she can.
Yeah, I agree. Her seat looks so safe. She can probably afford to do like however long she wants there. I think with Liz Truss, there's definitely that we've already seen the career move, but I think she'll be one of those MPs who will be like semi-notable backbencher, like and less and like maybe remembered, if people can, for what happened at the time in office, but also for taking like the heritage style beat. I predict she'll end up spending more than half the year in the US every year from a point.
Yes, that's a good call. So her seat is mega safe, right?
Yeah.
There's going to be a shortage on the ground of potential cabinet ministers in the next, or shadow cabinet ministers in the next parliament. She might well be back, not as leader, but I'm sure she still has a following within the party. Again, I mean, look, are they going to push that theory that somehow she was a victim of a sort of deep state conspiracy? It's not out of question, is it?
Not out of the question. I think the backstab narrative is something that Boris Johnson's has more sort of monopolized. I think that there's more oxygen behind the they got Boris than the they got Truss thing. Although I know there are some people out there who do believe this.
Definitely.
Who definitely.
And they've even got media rulers now. They've got this Conservative Post, haven't they? Don't know who's bankrolling that. And they've got KGB News. They're going to keep. There's plenty of outlets for all of this, and I don't think it's stopping at all. I think, as I say, I fully expect this year there is going to be some kind of attempt to destabilise Sunak by them.
Yeah, I think the rock and the hard place thing for the Tories, however, will be, as much as there are plenty of people out there who wish Johnson had never gone, who think that Truss should have seen through like Trussonomics, I don't know if. I think it has a push. See, this is the thing; it's all catch-22, right? Labour have held Trafford, by the way. I think if there's to be a push, it ends up inevitably being Johnson, and I think it probably doesn't work. It can't really be Truss. So who else?
Mog's the third one.
Mogg. Okay, Mogg being the third one. That makes sense. The only issue is internally or whatever. I'm sure these people are all very angry as such, but I don't know even that the majority of the party infrastructure tolerates it. I think that's not. Sorry, so I don't think it'd be seen, and I think this is rightly so. I don't think it'd be seen as serious.
No, I hear you, and I'm not convinced it will work, but I do think they're going to try. I don't think they are going to go down being loyal foot soldiers for Rishi Sunak, who they clearly don't support, never have.
No, absolutely. Absolutely indeed. Oops, Daisy. Right, the tracker is now at 1,032. There are 8 left because we won't get red card today. Another break, and the Tories have lost East Hampshire.
Yeah, yet another absolute Tory heartland, you know?
Yeah. Indeed. So that would make it so 8. I think we've got 7 to go. The ticker hasn't updated to take East Hampshire. So let's see how many went there. Or I do have a look at it here. Bear with me one moment. East Hampshire District Council. I can't find out the exact changes, but I'm sure it's coming at some point soon. Very nearly at the end here. Everything, all things considered. Anything on live chats. You got a message. Thank you very much. We've talked about this a fair bit. It's Connor underscore. But just for those who might have missed, because we have been going on ages, thoughts on next Tory leader, assuming Sunak exit next year. Paul, you can read.
Okay, yeah, headline tip, James Cleverly, 14-1. Love that. I think that's just a cracking back to lay trade, right? Do not think that he will lose that seat in Essex, Braintree. He's the Foreign Secretary, which is the single best platform to become Prime Minister from. He is one of certainly the top 5, maybe the top 2 media communicators in the Parliamentary Conservative Party. So he's an absolute confident 14-1. I respect both Penny Mordaunt and Ben Wallace, but there are doubts about Penny keeping her seat and Wallace wanting the job, so I wouldn't be so inclined to take single figures. Going down the list, I think that Shapps has a bit of potential. I don't think 33-1 is that great, but I wouldn't totally rule him out if he keeps his seat. You know, he is leadership material in my book. And the other 2, who I don't necessarily think will win, but I think Priti Patel thinks she'll hold her seat, and she remains a senior Tory, and she remains popular with that populist CDO wing of the party. So 50-1, interesting there. And I back Mog at 100-1 already. Don't think he'll necessarily be leader, but I could see him running perhaps before the election in some kind of way to try and save his seat, keep his profile.
Yeah, absolutely. My thinking on this would be prepared to have some fun, be patient, and do a bit of digging and take a risk or 2. Because it's entirely possible that half this field, depending on what happens at a general election, it's entirely possible you lose like 5 of the top 6 even in the betting. Like, who knows how bad it get. You know, Johnson may not stand. You know, there are Tory seats that are considered like easy holds now, which are within targeting crosshairs, and this is just through like natural vote changes. This isn't for like uber specific targeting. So have a think about the safety of the seats and then go from there, because basically the most senior Tories who are around will shorten massively. One of them might consider taking the job. It's probably not the worst idea to have age on your side as well. Somebody who has the ability or has the age profile to spend a few more years in opposition, because you're looking at, say, Labour win 400 seats overall or whatever. The Labour Party, for whatever you might think of it, the Labour government is going to be far, far more stable than the Conservative one we had recently. Nobody is going to be trying to trip up Keir Starmer. There's a uniformity there. Everything's agreed, right? So this is a long haul job. Might want to look a little younger in your age profiles. Cleverly's a pretty optimal age choice, right? He's not towards the end. It's part of the reason why Kemi's favourite. So I think do that. Then take a look at just survivors basically and pick a few big prices and sort of wait and see.
Well, let me throw one in there. I mean, which goes again, do you think Theresa May will run? And if so, I think she probably would keep that seat in Maidenhead on a personal vote. And it's not out of question. If the Tory party is reduced to a rump, she'd have to come into it if she wanted it. I don't know if she wants the job, but I can think of worse 100 to 1 chances than that. She certainly appeals a lot more than any of the others around her in the betting, like Jenrick and Nadine Harvey, Therese Coffey, no way. Dowden, no way. Kwarteng, no way. So if on a short list of like 5 or something, I think I'd probably include May at 100 to 1.
Yeah, I think it's a really good argument on Theresa May. I agree with the thinking of Cleverly. I like it. I like profile. I like the fact also that if a bunch of the cabinet lose their seats, he becomes instantly the most experienced person like standing. I also would be a happy layer if that's your thing at that price of Ben Wallace at 8 to 1. Because if he didn't want to be prime minister when he would have been the favourite to be prime minister, he is definitely not hanging around to do opposition years. He's off to, like, I don't know, NATO, EC, whatever. Like, I would probably follow Paul's thinking, but I'd say be speculative. Like there is no wrong price at big odds in this market. Nothing.
Yeah, there are people not on that list who I can't completely identify at the moment. But if we're in this long campaign towards general election now, we're looking at all the constituencies, and we're also going to be looking at who the 100 safest Tories are. Right, and once you've got that 100, 150 safest Tories, they're your runners. Most of them won't have a prayer, won't have any leadership ambitions, but there will be a few. And like I say, I mean, if we are talking 97, sorry for yet again bringing in the 97 angle, but it's hard not to. I'm pretty certain that nobody would have put up William Hague to be the next leader 1 year in 1996. He was the Welsh secretary, he was barely known. And yet, by the time the actual contest started, he was a 2 to 1 94 favourite.
Yeah. It can happen, it can change so fast. So yeah, I really wouldn't disagree. Wouldn't disagree at all with that. Thank you very much for the follow-ups. In my view, Hunt, Johnson, Wallace more than unlikely to run. Agree. I see value in Cleverly and Badenoch. Badenoch has shortened. Is Badenoch a justifiable favourite? I think justifiable. Made a bid before. She has support amongst the grassroots. I know obviously she's had some in-runs, etc., or run-ins, I should say, had some run-ins with the senior party leadership, but I think the whole thing is she left standing? If there's a big tidal wave, whether it's red or yellow, comes and takes her out, suddenly you've got a non-runner and she's already 100 to 30 only. I don't think it's the worst price in the world. I might be inclined to wait a bit with Badenoch because you can pull the trigger much later. You'll get a much better idea of who's really vulnerable and who's not, because there'll be really detailed polling in the run up to an election anyway. There'll be an MRP or whatever, and you can probably go and look up your candidates then. Bit of advice here as well. keep an ear to the ground with regards to what pollsters are doing, and then also you can be quick, right? So the market sometimes, if you've got an MRP, etc., you just start searching names or whatever, and you can calculate gains and losses. Suddenly, you've got that key advantage. So being sharp and sort of being engaged is a big help.
Massively. I'm looking through the Betfair list. There's a couple of others here spring to mind, right? But we need to do a bit of Googling about their seats. Okay. So first of all, Gillian Keegan, who is definitely, for me, a rising star in the Conservative Party. Let me just see. Where is she the MP for? Chichester. Would have thought that potentially vulnerable to the blue wall, to Lib Dems in the blue wall, but not, it's still a, historically it's a rock solid, safe Tory seat. But I could think of her going well at a big price. Michelle Donnellan, where's her seat? I think I would much prefer Gillian Keegan to. Michelle Donnellan is the MP for. Sec.
By the way, the Huffington Post, the excellent Karen Schofield of the Huffington Post has written a helpful piece, which has, I think, some of the biggest at-risk seats. And basically, Oliver Dowden, Michael Gove, Grant Shapps, Jacob Rees-Mogg, Dominic Raab, Nadine Zahawi, and Theresa May, basically they suffered big defeats in their backyard. So
they fancy it, right? They think Welwyn Garden City will go. But in that case, if that's the case, I suspect Shapps will stand down then and go and get a job in the private sector. I don't think he'll hang around for a defeat.
Fair, yeah. I mean, that's where Welwyn Hatford was. And then, of course, there was the Zahawi. The Lib Dems reckon they're 13 points ahead in North East Somerset. And May's local council of Windsor and Maidenhead fell. So, yeah, 6 basically big Tory MPs in.
Okay, yeah. So I'll give you a short list. Looking at this, I can give you a short list. Okay. Cleverly number 1. Gillian Keegan number 2. Priti Patel number 3.
Yeah, sounds. I think it sounds very, very fair. Right, having a look at the live stream. The professor. Thank you. This is BV Mark on the live chat. He's a great guy. Really good follow at BV Mark 1977. Really good greyhound judge, but also likes his politics too. Thank you very much for joining. Let me know if there's any questions you want answered, because we are here until the very last results rolls in. Something is bubbling. So, just Labour holding Southampton. Latest update, 1,038 with 7 to go. So we will see about that. So basically, we will see very much about what happens with regards to the final tally. 15.0 you can get for Cleverly. That does seem a big price. Okie doke. Might have a look at the map to see how full it is for results. 517 gains for Labour now, 408 for the Lib Dems, and 241s for the Greens. They're just short now of 500 councillors, which is a very impressive result for them. Here's a map. Results. I'm just going to zoom in a bit. And then you do see what happened in the southwest in particular. those coastal gains for Labour. And yes, a lot of yellow here and a lot of red over there. The story really of the day, as an absolute flood of results came in earlier, pretty much all of them bad for the Conservatives. So we're just waiting now for the last few results to come in. They won't all be in tonight because there's a recount on Tuesday in Redcar. But that is just by the by, that is just I's and T's being dotted and crossed. Right, so any questions for us? I'll just wait. Nothing yet, but do give us a shout if you're one of the 9 people still with us.
9 people. Well done, guys. Well done. Thank you.
But love each and every one of you. Because this is a harder job than a general election live stream or something like that, or even to some point pre or that postal voting US election, because this fair old song, we're coming up on the 22-hour mark, basically. So I know some of you would have been around for the first stream, so yeah, massively thankful for that, and yeah, really appreciate the support that we're getting. Sassy quote of the day. This comes from a Lib Dem source speaking to Kevin Schofield of the Huffington Post. Finally, the Conservatives have delivered on something they promised: 1,000 seats lost. Which that is definitely the quote of the day. Speaking of, that number was 1,038 last looked. It remains there. So yeah, we will see exactly if or when there should be some results to come in. I think the last was meant to be 8:30, so that's about when we'll go until.
Another little market question, right? Rishi Sunak exit date. Looking at the Betfair odds, 8-1 this year, 5-4 2024, and just odds on about 10-11 2025 or later. What would you be there?
Oh, so good, isn't it?
Yeah. Because it's going to really go down to the wire of when that election is, because
Go on.
How long does the leadership, let's say they're going to lose the election and he's going to resign as Prime Minister, obviously, like in the morning, he removes Prime Minister. He will stay as Conservative Party leader, I assume, like all the other ones did before, in name only, while the leadership contest takes place. Now, the problem you've got there is that, let's say they hold that election in October. Well, how long does the leadership contest take place, and how does it factor in with the Christmas break? I would have thought it would be quite hard to get a lead. If there's an election in October, I would have thought it's going to be quite hard to get a new leader in place before Christmas.
That's a really good point. I would have thought this result would make it that the Conservatives will absolutely try and run down the clock, and be minded to try and run down the clock for lots of reasons. I think this makes a deeper, darker winter election much more likely.
You also, turnout would fall, wouldn't it? I mean, you would assume they want turnout down. Right, turnout's going to be lowest in December, isn't it?
Yeah, that would be true.
How many people were turned away?
Voter ID.
it's going to take ages to get, and they're not reliable figures anyway because they haven't got the mandate to count them properly, have they?
Yeah, indeed.
I mean, look again. We don't know, but this was the chances. The likelihood is that that's hurt other parties than the Conservatives more, right? And they're going to lose 1,100 seats despite that. It's just.
Yeah, just absolutely.
I don't sound like a broken record, but it's such a bad result. It's as bad a result as I can ever remember for the Conservative Party. It feels like almost worse than 97.
Indeed. Just having a look at the last two leadership elections. One Rishi Sunak was unopposed. Having a look at how long that took. It was in October. And when did it start exactly? There was a mourning period, I think, also, despite have clashed with the passing of Her Majesty the Queen. Previously, the July-September one, so this is the one where Truss was elected, that went from the 30th of July to the 5th of September. Less than a month-ish. Sorry, it really is like the last embers of this, so my brain's not working quite as it should, but sorry, July, August, September, so yeah, a few weeks, right, assuming you have a contested election to get a new leader in. Yeah, you're right, there could be an angle.
Surely it's 6 weeks, isn't it, minimum?
Yeah, six weeks, and I cannot imagine.
And they break what, like December the 12th or something in Parliament. Yeah. So you've really got to, it's going to be very, very tight indeed. And I'm inclined to think that they wouldn't even want to do that. They would probably, given the situation that they would be in opposition, why rush it, right? Why not have an extended 3-month leadership campaign? In fact, the best leadership campaign from their point of view they ever did was the one that produced Cameron, and they went on for months. Howard lost the election; he didn't resign straight away. He said, "I'm just going to be caretaker for a few months and oversee all this."
Yeah,
that wouldn't be a bad thing to do. Whether Sunak, of course, wants to stay in Parliament after he's lost is another matter. I'm inclined to think he'll end up back in California.
Yeah, that's true. I think all of that is true. I'd be inclined to look at 25 as the exit date, just because I think there's every chance they hold the election so late that by the time all the formal processes, etc., take place, you're already there. Because if I remember, when did Boris Johnson actually technically become Prime Minister?
About August, July, June, July, August.
Yeah.
There was the by-election, wasn't there? The first day he was leader, there was a by-election that they lost in southwest, sort of, not south, just into where was that by-election? See, my brain's going now.
That's fine. 24th July, so you're right. I'll find out where the by-election was.
Yeah, it was, they lost to Lib Dems. It was the other party stood down to help Lib Dems. And then the Tories won it back at the general.
By the way, sorry I missed your comment, Connor. I actually, this is the weird thing. I'm going to contradict myself completely. I think if they have an election at a normal time, then yeah, evens 24 is like great value. But I just think for self-preservation reasons, it's highly likely that this goes all the way to like another December, just purely because nobody wants to give it their seat that early, and then suddenly his official date, when everything's like said and done, is 25 and settled as that. I'd probably rather small stakes 25 than big stakes 24. But
I think so too.
Let's see. Right, 24th July by-election. Gonna see. No dice there. Probably should have put the year in. There we go. I can have a look now. There were right June. There was one in June and one in August 2019. There was Peterborough. Lisa Forbes won Peterborough in June 2019 for Labour. And in Brecon and Ragnshire, Jane Dodds won for Liberal Democrats. That was in August 2019. So those are the two.
Sorry, say that again. I'm just replying to something.
No worries at all. There were two by-elections in that summer. One was in Peterborough. Lisa Forbes won for Labour. That was on the 6th of June. On the 1st of August, Jane Dodds won Brecon and Ragnshire. I'm saying that.
Brecon and Ragnshire, that's it, yeah.
Okay, good. Mystery solved there. 15 minutes to go until I think PA estimated that we'd have the last council declaration. Nothing's come through yet. Do pepper us with your questions to keep us going. Connor, I believe it means, I mean, you'd want to check the terms on this, but I believe it is settled on the date of the Prime Minister not being the Prime Minister anymore. I believe the final day in office is when it's settled. I would check with your bookmaker wherever you're betting. Some will settle based on a resignation. Some would settle based on an official exit. So when basically somebody goes to the king for appointment. So do check your T&Cs because that's quite important. But no, it's a good question. It's a good question. Just waiting for. By the way, 7 of you still with us. Amazing. I love the fact that there's a geek community of us watching the local elections page still going very strong.
We outlasted the BBC. Let that never be forgotten.
Yeah, never. Absolutely. We outlasted the BBC and Sky. I must say, actually, I was quite surprised that the BBC's coverage as such ended so early. I think like they had Politics Live discussing those election results, whatever. I know this, they lots of people have been up all night. It's a huge effort. Absolutely no doubt about that. But it's literally it was 4:45, I think, when their TV coverage mostly ended. Somebody put me right if I'm wrong, but I can't remember seeing anything.
Look, I guess, I mean, what's going on here is that they've already booked the entire weekend for the coronation. Yeah. So if they're going to report any other news, they've got to find a time to squeeze it in somewhere, haven't they?
That's true. That is true. It's a good point. There's a breakdown here of how the Greens lost Brighton and Hove to Labour. More Tory losses there, interestingly, 7. The Greens lost 9, Independents gained 2, Labour gained 14. That's an interesting, I find that quite interesting, given everything basically that has happened today for the Greens. It's been a really successful day for them. And I'm sure there will be lots of celebrations. Yeah, it did end at 4:45 today. It's absolutely incredible. Right, any more for any more? Who's here? 1,041 is the loss count now. That's the tally for the Conservatives. Interesting, this spotted by Simon on Twitter. So that's Simon K_133. Good account, albeit he is locked. And the Conservatives actually made some gains there in terms of councillors. Labour lost 22 councillors there. The Conservatives gained 17, the Greens 3.
Which was that one? Sorry, we'll just missed the start of that.
No worries. Just something interesting. Somebody on Twitter looked at the Leicester scoreboard. 54 seats. Labour.
Leicester's interesting because there you have the heavily Asian Indian population in Leicester, and that's the one demographic that has moved against Labour's for the Tories, to understand. It's been happening. Funnily enough, actually, I could see that happening. At the last election, you had the Modi government interfering in our, pushing propaganda in our election with bots and trolls and everything. And funnily enough, I actually backed some really extreme a couple of outlier targets for the Tories there because of that. So maybe it's just belatedly happening, But that's a problem place for Labour.
Yeah, that is interesting. So many little signals that we do find in these results. Speaking of, nothing still yet. It's staying stubbornly the same for the English councils. That's probably I don't know when the next set of results will come. I'd imagine by maybe 9 you might have the rest, but I think that's basically those are your like headlines, the headline numbers. Just to recap, Labour 2,642 councillors. That's a gain of 517 seats. Oh, we got some news. The Independents have won control of Boston Borough Council. Previously Tories, they lost 10 councillors.
Again, a place where Labour didn't break through was Lincolnshire.
Indeed. Also, these results in Trafford, interesting. Big Labour win there, 41.
That is, Go on, carry on.
No, go on.
Trafford again. That is an area that has been. I mean, that's more than just this election. That's been happening for a number of years. Corbyn made big strides in Trafford in 2018, I think it was, those elections. When they took that, that's a kind of part of the wider demographic changes. welfare, educated, middle class population turning against the Tories. You also had fracking was a big issue around there.
Indeed, 41 Labour councillors, I think, on that council. The next best was 10.
I mean, that's such a sign of how things have changed, like demographically. Because, God, I can remember Trafford being this kind of holy grail for Labour. But can we ever take Trafford? And now they're dominating it.
Right.
We had a by-election there, didn't we? Stretford, I think Stretford and Ernston. I've got a feeling that might be in Trafford.
Yeah. I'll have a little search of that in a moment.
Right on the border of it, if it isn't.
Yeah. Let's have a look at that. By the way, these are the headline results here. The Conservatives, at the moment, they've lost 1,041 seats, but that number will increase. There are a few councils left to declare, probably a handful lost for them. The Lib Dems, 410 seats gained. They've got 1,592, been a great day for them. Lots of big headline gains. And the Greens have had a pretty stunning time of it. 242 councillors gained there. Hopefully you're seeing that on the top here. We're waiting for the very last results to come in, but I'm not sure we'll see necessarily before 9 or so now. It was estimated it would be I think it was estimated to be 8:30, the last results, but I think it will probably be a bit later. Let's have a look. Oh, somebody's come up with 2 interesting lists. This is building on the Leicester stuff again. This is from at Elon Musgraves. Tory MPs were probably feeling a bit of relief right now. Marco Longhi, Mike Wood, Eddie Hughes, Rob Blackman. Labour MPs who might, they've put might in asterisks, be slightly jittery right now. Valerie Vaz, Gareth Torres, Barry Gardner, whoever replaces Claudia Webb, and with more asterisks, maybe Wes Streeting. I presume this is based on those numbers that we saw earlier, where one of the very few places that they've made any losses came in Leicester. So I presume that's around those areas. Righto, having a look to see if there's anything I've missed. And also going to take a look to see if we've got any new chats. Do get in touch with questions whilst we fill the gap. We've been used to have such all of this activity. Basically, we've been used to having. So yeah, please do just let us know. Interesting, by the way, on that comment you made earlier, Paul. I'm told the Tories did best in Hindu plurality wards. My apologies to everybody who's just heard me butcher that completely. Right, let's have a look. We'll do a quick refresh, see if anything has come through. Nope, nothing more yet. So we're sort of all sitting and waiting around. Right. Any other takeaways from everything?
No, pretty sure we have covered it all. And if we haven't, then we will do in imminent episodes of the Polling Station.
Yes, absolutely. There will be sort of a more fuller takeaway sort of episodes next week at some point. Right. Any more? I might ask. I think we might possibly leave it there whilst giving another round of thank yous, because I don't think anything is coming in before 9 or so, and I think by now we definitely know all the stories and the results today. But just to go through them one more time, Labour, I'm going to go with councillors rather than seats or whatever, not to confuse myself. 2,646 councillors, 521 councillors gained. The Conservatives, 2,253 councillors, losses of 1,041 councillors. Lib Dems, 1,592, a gain of 410 councillors. Independents, there are 843 independent councillors, that's a loss of 98. The Greens, there are 471 Green councillors now, that's a gain of 238. And I should know what, I think it's Residents Association, that's it, 90, a loss of 22, sorry. 223 councillors, I think, have been declared. So the ticket's gone to 1,044. And the long story short, the headline takeaway, an abysmal night for the Conservatives, beyond even the worst expectations we all had. Tory chairman Greg Hands put the 1,000 seat line out there, heavy management expectation, and yet it's still been beaten. Big gains for Labour, the Liberal Democrats and the Greens. It appears like lots of tactical voting in some areas, but definitely a split where the Lib Dems have done very well in what would be called the blue wall, whilst Labour have retaken lots of red wall areas. And the Greens have popped up in some really interesting places, including outside of generally university-friendly cities. Thanks so much to everyone for joining us. Oh, including Connor, who's just asked a question. We've discussed this, but I think we'll go over the case again quickly. Is there value in backing the Labour majority? Me and Paul both emphatically in the yes camp on that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think we expect that price to get shorter at some point.
Remember, it was 4 to 6 only a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And now it's nearly even. So, and there's no way I'm not having it that things have improved at all in the last few weeks. They haven't. No. Clearly, the sort of that narrative about the Sunak bounce was just nonsense. It was just people don't know who's coming back.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I would say there is value in backing a Tory majority right now. If it's your thing, if you can get basically almost any price actually on most seats, if you've got that sort of put away, I'd definitely be a believer that you're getting a return. I've seen falls on somewhere, and I think that frankly looks a bit of a gift horse in the street if you can get enough on to make it worthwhile. We've seen some projections, some Commons projections, but again, a sort of health and wealth warning. Don't assume that these projections would carry over to a general election, because in a general election, everywhere is voting. We've only had specific places in England vote today. We haven't had Scotland, we haven't had Wales. So if you see those projections or whatever, have fun with them, but do be very, very careful, and don't presume, that will be the makeup of the next election. It will not be. The picture will be very, very different. That's a very nice looking position. Thank you, by the way, Gurney. Really appreciate that. Really appreciate you guys being here. Paul, I think I'm going to let you go. I think I'm going to let you all go. But just before I do, thanks so much to everybody from Star for helping. Thanks so much to Emma for her time earlier. Torin, Jasneet, Pushkin, Joe and David on the content side, in trading, Kit, JB, Ed, Jordan, and the head trading Jave Jolly. That's been it from the second polling station live stream, looking at all of the results. It will be available to watch, I think, on catch up. Just go to our webpage and head to streams. We'll be back at some point next week after, I hope for both our sakes, a lot of rest. But for now, thank you very much and have a great evening and a great weekend.